Diana, her companion, Dodi Fayed, and a chauffeur were killed early this morning in Paris when their car went out of control. One of the last journalists to interview Diana spoke with CNN about that interview.
There was a real problem with the press, and we talked a little bit about that because, of course, she was very much aware of what she represented and how well known she was. So she was willing to use this fame for different causes, and she was feeling a real responsibility because she was famous, a responsibility to use that in order to promote different values, and I think she did that well. So sometimes she was accused of using the press, but I think she was just playing her role. By the other way, she very often she said to paparazzi or to photographers, "You make a hell of my life," she said once. And we talked a little bit about that, and she explained how the British press especially, but not only the British press, I guess, but was really hard towards her, and was always looking for something which was bad, and always criticizing her and pursuing her. Well, I'll keep the memory of a real great personality, a real character full of charms, and full of dignity, and full of compassion. She was close, so close to people. When I talked to her, she told me how her father always taught me to consider anybody as an equal, and she said, "I always did, and I'll always do, and I'm sure my sons have learned from that experience, and I'm sure they will, because really she was very much involved in different fields in charities and doing whatever she could for the people she was visiting. And she was not obliged to do all that kind of thing. There's a lot of duties I know a princess has to do, but she wasn't obliged to do all the different visits she was doing in hospital, for the refugees, in all the countries she was going to, etc. And we finished the interview and the conversation by a sentence that I always remember, and I'll finish the article I wrote with that words of her. She said, "Whoever in distress would call me, I'll come wherever he is." And I think I thought this was really unbelievable for a princess. This was a kind of risk she was taking, but she was not aware of that kind of risk. And I think for that maybe people didn't consider her enough for all the jobs she was doing. People had, there was a trend to consider she was just a very pretty and charming princess, and that's all. And she had not to talk about about important or too serious subjects like landmines or like politics. But I think she was much more aware of things than most of the people thought, and she was much smarter than they thought always. And I think her sons must be very proud of her.
We'll be back after a short break. I'm Catherine Calloway, and this is CNN Headline News. Air Force Base near London about an hour ago. Members of an honor guard transferred her flag-draped casket to a waiting hearse. Prince Charles, who had been in Scotland with his two sons, flew to Paris earlier with Diana's two sisters to accompany her body. Charles retrieved his former wife's remains at the hospital, where she was pronounced dead, and there's no word yet on funeral plans. Princess Diana's brother is expressing his deep sense of loss and grief.
All those who've come into contact with Diana, particularly over the past 17 years, will share my family's grief. She was unique. She understood the most precious needs of human beings, particularly those that suffered. And her vibrancy and sparkle, combined with a very real sense of duty, are now gone forever.
In Paris, tearful mourners are bringing flowers to the scene of the car crash that claimed Princess Diana's life and the life of her companion, Egyptian film producer Dodi Fayed. Diana's British admirers have also been paying their respects outside Diana's former residence in London. Brent Sadler reports.
Outside Kensington Palace, Princess Diana's London home, the flowers began to arrive soon after dawn, and the tears began to flow. They came from far and wide, squeezing past the cameras, laying personal tributes at the foot of the royal gates. From the Middle East, Australia, Japan, Africa, and Germany. An endless list of nationalities paying their last respects.
I'm devastated by Diana's death, and I think she meant a lot to most people in this country, and I think she's probably the best member of the royal family there was.
At first, there was disbelief that both Diana and Dodi Fayed had died. Early risers appeared dazed. But late edition British newspapers confirmed the horror of the tragedy, printing little more than the basic facts of the accident in Paris.
Well, it's just shocking, absolutely shocking. She's part of the establishment, part of life, you know. I mean, you know, you're such a popular figure, you don't expect somebody like that to just sort of be wiped out, you know. It's a terrible thing, you know.
Her title and status within Britain's Royal House of Windsor matters little to Diana's legions of admirers, both in Britain and across the world. Their abiding memories are of a woman filled with understanding and compassion.
We all saw Diana cry when she was upset, and if you think of her, you can see her crying with her arms around people with AIDS. I mean, I'll always remember that first television news where she held hands with a man with AIDS. And that was the first time you'd ever seen that done without gloves. I'll always remember that. And I think she was there for everybody. Today we must be here for her and show her boys that we care as well.
In death as in life, Diana, Princess of Wales, will remain one of the most talked about women this century. The shock is now setting in. Britain faces many days of sorrow and self-examination. Recriminations and accusations may follow as the establishment, the monarchy and the people wonder if they couldn't have done more to prevent the loss of the princess. In the short term, though, a period of mourning has got underway with a widely expressed popular view that the final goodbye should be nothing less than a state funeral. Brent Sadler, CNN, Kensington Palace, London.
The car Diana was riding in crashed while it was being pursued by paparazzi on motorcycles. The princess suffered major chest, lung, and head injuries and died on an operating table. Fayed and the driver died on the scene. A bodyguard survived with serious injuries. French police say the car they were in was driving at speeds of up to 85 miles per hour when it careened into the wall of a tunnel. Police detained 7 photographers and have now opened a criminal investigation. President Clinton and the First Lady are mourning Diana's death from Martha's Vineyard, where they're on vacation. Mr. Clinton expressed admiration for Diana, who was involved in such causes as helping needy children, fighting AIDS, and opposing landmines. The president says he hopes that work continues.
I will always be glad that I knew the princess, and always think of her in very strong and positive terms, as will Hillary. And we can only hope that her work will go forward, and that everyone who can will support her 2 fine sons and help them to have the life and the future that she would want.
Condolences are pouring in from around the world, from ordinary citizens to heads of state. People are gathering outside Diana's former Kensington Palace residence and outside of Buckingham Palace, laying down flowers in her memory. Some outside Kensington have been sitting with their heads in their hands in tears. Parisians have laid red roses at the spot where the car carrying Diana crashed. British Prime Minister Tony Blair remembers.
Our thoughts and prayers are with Princess Diana's family, in particular her 2 sons, the 2 boys. Our hearts go out to them. We are today a nation grief.
Russian President Boris Yeltsin issued a statement saying Diana was well known and loved by the people of Russia. And a statement from the United Nations said, quote, "It's a tragic loss home to millions around the world. She will be missed." The first moment she stepped into the public eye, Princess Diana was mobbed by a swarm of photographers, and they never left her life. Over the next 16 years, they became almost a part of her daily routine, facing her at formal occasions and news conferences, forcing close or too personal. The National Enquirer's editor is urging publications he says are now available for $1 million. People magazine says it most likely will not.
If you had that picture, let us say, the last picture in the car prior to the terrible collision, would you...
I think it's too early for me to say. We haven't gone to the table.
Really
No,
don't
I do
know?
not think so. I do not think so. I mean, it would seem to be an incredibly poor taste and judgment to do so. And I'll be very curious to see what other publications do with it.
I think that this renegade behavior from the press in America. Di was beloved. This is a senseless tragedy. There was no need for this. Everyone recognizes that. And once we shut down this small contingent of stockerazzi, life will be back to what it was before.
The sorrow over Diana's death stretches from Prince to the World Wide Web. Brian Nelson reports the internet is giving many of her admirers a high-tech way to share their loss.
From the moment the news broke, this small cottage industry devoted to Diana the celebrity transformed suddenly in tone and character to mourn this so very public woman. Instantly, gossipy internet sites started offering people worldwide an opportunity to send and to share messages of condolence, and the response was huge. From Australia, New Zealand, the United Arab Emirates, Malaysia, and many cities in the U.S., expressions of sadness for the princess one man calls elegant, regal, and beautiful. Another woman who spoke to Diana in a crowd once writes that the brief encounter leaves her grieving the loss of a personal friend. Few seem immune from a sense of loss. At this site, admitting that its light-hearted examination of Diana the celebrity was inappropriate, a timely sense of decorum prevailed, its creators temporarily shutting it down. A couple in Allentown, Pennsylvania, so moved by Diana's death, immediately launched a new internet chat room so mourners could have a community to share their grief. And the messages poured in. The media, certainly to come under extreme scrutiny in the wake of this tragedy, also started to feel the backlash. Wrote one person, the reporters should have died, not her. It is a sick press. The official site devoted to receiving condolences is, of course, Buckingham Palace's homepage. Here all spoke. Diana, despite her divorce from Prince Charles, is being accorded honored status as a member of the royal family. What she wasn't, and what she now will never be in life, is a queen. But to legions of her fans and admirers worldwide, Diana is the princess who will never be forgotten. Brian Nelson, CNN, Atlanta.
The rest of the day's news in just a moment, and we'll have more on the death of Princess Diana later. Now, a check of the national weather.
She might have detested the scorching glare of the media spotlight on her private life, but Princess Diana did manage to bend the light, casting it on people whose suffering is often overlooked.
She genuinely was saintly. She meant what she said when she talked about the underprivileged and the dispossessed. She was a woman who hadn't got a vicious bone in her body.
She did seem to possess an abundance of compassion. The princess focused attention on the need for decent care for patients suffering from AIDS, visiting clinics in Great Britain and New York.
HIV does not make people dangerous to know, so you can shake their hands and give them a hug.
Her statements carried weight, but the simple act of shaking the hand of an AIDS patient sent an even more powerful message, and it may have altered public attitudes about the illness in many corners of the world.
How many times shall we remember her? In how many different ways? With the sick, the dying, with children, with the needy.
Only this year, the princess drew attention to the danger of landmines left in battle zones around the globe. She held a spent mine for the cameras during a January visit to the African nation of Angola and spoke out in June at a Washington event sponsored by the American Red Cross.
Long after conflict is ended, its innocent victims die or are maimed in countries of which we hear little. Their lonely fate is never reported.
Even as the gossip of her romance with Dodi Fayed broke around the world, Diana was risking her safety with a visit to Bosnia, lightly declining to discuss her love life, restricting her comments to the landmine issue, winning more accolades for her grace under pressure. There were occasional sin or the pursuit of fun, but overshadowed by the excitement this summer around the sale of Diana's gowns at Christie's auction house in New York was the fact that it raised millions of dollars for charity. Many Americans, of course, were charmed by Diana and appreciated her charitable efforts in the U.S., appearing at a fundraiser in Washington for breast cancer research, touring a halfway house for the homeless in New York. During a visit here in June, Diana enjoyed one of several meetings she'd had with Mother Teresa. All who saw them together had to be struck by the contrast in their outward appearance, but many also sensed a kinship of inward spirit. Diana's brother, Charles Spencer, knew her finest qualities.
She understood the most precious needs of human beings, particularly those that suffered, and her vibrancy and sparkle, combined with a very real sense of duty, are now gone forever.
We'll be back in 2 minutes. I'm Linda Stouffer, and you're with CNN Headline News. I'm Linda Stouffer. Just days ago, Princess Diana told a French reporter she'd leave Britain if it weren't for her 2 young sons. About 90 minutes ago, her body was returned where she was so beloved, but where she couldn't get the privacy she longed for. Her former husband, Prince Charles, and her 2 sisters accompanied the body to Paris, where Diana died following an early morning auto accident. Dan Ronan looks at her last hours.
Midnight Paris time. Princess Diana was in this car with her companion, wealthy Egyptian businessman, 42-year-old Dodi Fayed, a driver and a bodyguard. Diana arrived in Paris Saturday afternoon. The couple dined at the Ritz Hotel, which is owned by Fayed's father. The car reportedly was being chased down a highway and through a tunnel by paparazzi photographers riding motorcycles. Diana's new relationship with Fayed was a huge story in the tabloids. The Mercedes-Benz was traveling at a high speed when it smashed into a wall inside a tunnel.
The airbag on the passenger side was deployed, as he said, and we saw a lot of liquid on the ground. And when Tom went into the tunnel to help, we didn't know who it was at the time. Somebody came running towards us, speaking French, shouting in French, and we thought for some reason it was going to blow up in the tunnel. We stood there, watched a little bit, and police came about 7 to 10 minutes later, ambulance about 15 minutes later.
It didn't take photographers that long to get to the scene.
Initially, when I approached the vehicle, the gentleman who was taking pictures was there immediately following the accident. Before I could run from the mouth of the tunnel, 50 yards approximately, to the 30 yards from the car, he was already...
You're saying within seconds of the crash.
Within seconds. And his camera equipment was far too sophisticated for a tourist or someone not professional, I assumed, associated with the press.
One report says the photographer was beaten by onlookers. Fayed and the chauffeur were dead at the scene. Diana and the bodyguard were rushed 4 miles to a Paris hospital, both in critical condition. As the world waited to hear more details about Diana's fate, outrage was building as many people heard reports paparazzi may have caused the accident. A criminal investigation is underway by Paris police into whether the pursuing paparazzi caused the crash. At least 7 people have been detained for questioning, and their motorcycles are being held. Newsweek magazine Paris bureau chief Christopher Dickey went to the crash scene. He described the condition of the luxury car as it was removed from the tunnel.
It is totally smashed in front. You can see where the airbags, both front airbags deployed, but the car, the front of it is totally smashed in. The area above the windshield is totally smashed down. The roof is collapsed on top of both the driver's area and the passenger's area. And the area in the back, all the glass is broken out, and the right-hand part of the roof has collapsed downward there, too.
About 5 hours after the accident, Dickey was at Salpêtrière Hospital in Paris when the French government made the official announcement.
Diana is dead. She died at 4 o'clock this morning. She was in very serious condition when she was pulled out of the car. Her friend, Dodi Fayed, was dead in the car, dead on the scene, so was the driver. She was pulled out. She was brought to this hospital. They worked very hard to bring her back, but she suffered from at least one heart attack, a massive injury to her lung, and in the end, they were unable to revive her.
Doctors worked on Diana for 2 hours trying to save her life.
At her arrival at the Salpêtrière Hospital, she was in a condition of serious hemorrhage and shock. Shortly thereafter, she went into cardiac arrest. An urgent surgery showed a severe wound to the left pulmonary vein. Despite the closure of this wound and a 2-hour external and internal cardiac massage, no efficient respiratory circulation could be established, and she died at 4 a.m. Paris time.
Diana, Princess of Wales, was 36. Dan Ronan, CNN reporting.
People around the world are mourning Diana's death. Parisians have placed flowers at the site where the car carrying Diana crashed. Thousands of admirers are gathering outside Buckingham Palace and the princess's Kensington Palace residence to remember her. Buckingham Palace issued a statement saying, "The Queen and Prince of Wales are deeply shocked and distressed. Other members of the royal family are being informed of the princess's death." British Prime Minister Tony Blair says his entire country will be in a state of mourning. He says Diana was a wonderful, compassionate person who was loved around the world and will be mourned as a friend.
You know how difficult things were for her from time to time. I'm sure we can only guess at, but the people everywhere, not just here in Britain, everywhere, they kept faith with Princess Diana. They liked her, they loved her. They regarded her as one of the people. She was the people's princess. And that's how she will stay, how she will remain in our hearts and in our memories forever.
The President and Mrs. Clinton, on vacation in Martha's Vineyard, are expressing their sorrow over Princess Diana's death. A Clinton aide says the two were visibly upset and left the clam bake they were attending shortly after hearing the news. An emotional President Clinton appeared near tears as he made a brief statement this morning.
Let me say again how very sad Hillary and I are about the terrible accident that has taken the life of Princess Diana and the others who were with her. We liked her very much. We admired her work for children, for people with AIDS, for the cause of ending the scourge of landmines in the world, and for her love for her children, William and Harry. And I know that this is a very difficult time for millions of people in the United Kingdom who are deeply shocked and grieving. And the American people send their condolences to all of them, and we value their friendship, and we understand this great and painful experience.
Russian President Boris Yeltsin and Mother Teresa are among the many heads of state and public figures expressing grief over Diana's untimely death. Diana's death is focusing new attention on paparazzi, those photographers who follow the every move of many celebrities. The senior editor of the National Enquirer says paparazzi are shopping around photos of Diana's death scene for as much as $1 million. He's urging the world press to join the Enquirer in its decision to boycott publication of those photos. Princess Diana's love-hate relationship with the media made her one of the most photographed women in the world.
She had agreements with certain London newspapers, and as you say, on the first trip, because she made 3 trips to the Mediterranean in the last 4 weeks, on the first trip she made an agreement with the British press, and in fact went over in a speedboat to speak to them, some colleagues of mine, to say what could be taken and what couldn't. And they basically agreed to that. But what we have, again, referring back to what we were talking about, is not so much bona fide representatives of London newspapers or world newspapers, but you get these amateurs, these paparazzi types, who will go out on a limb because they know that if they can get between Diana and the press, they're going to make a lot of money from it.
Some people in Britain, France, and elsewhere are calling for new privacy laws to protect celebrities from intrusive photographers. Even though the United States was not her homeland, the death of the popular princess is sobering news for many Americans this holiday weekend. Jim Hill has that.
The news of Princess Diana's sudden death hit the U.S. in the midst of the Labor Day weekend. News coverage was nonstop well into the early morning hours. In Los Angeles, as elsewhere, people reacted with shock and sadness.
There's a lot of people over here that love her, that really, really love her. And kind of hard, hard to take.
Tragic that her life ended, and she was a terrific woman, actually, very humanistic, and it's just tragic to hear that.
Diana's life as the Princess of Wales, her troubled marriage and eventual divorce from Prince Charles had fascinated people in the U.S. almost as much as it had those in England. Her death in a Paris car crash along with her companion, Dodi Fayed, struck many as especially tragic for a woman who'd been through so much.
That's awful. I think she's had a difficult enough life that it had to end now.
At a British-style pub in Santa Monica, California, people reacted bitterly to allegations that Diana's car was being chased by the aggressive photographers known as paparazzi.
The thing she hated the most more or less killed her, getting away from these people who just wouldn't leave her alone 24 hours a day.
At Universal Studios City Walk in Los Angeles, crowds on the Labor Day weekend were sobered by the sad story.
On this otherwise festive holiday weekend, many people were learning the news for the first time as it literally filtered through the crowd by word of mouth. That's news to me. You're not joking, right? This isn't a joke. Well, that's a terrible situation.
People asked each other how it happened and if Diana's children, William and Harry, knew of the tragedy.
I'm just very sad. And I just really wish the best for her kids. And I know it's going to be very hard for them.
It all left the night a strange mix. The laughter of happy vacationers and the somber air of those pondering the death of Princess Diana. Jim Hill, CNN, Los Angeles.
And now a check on the nation's weather forecast. Royal families from all over the world after news of the sudden death of Princess Diana. Mourners have created a memorial at the British Embassy in Washington. Andrew Roberts of the Sunday London Times spoke with CNN's Jim Clancy about Diana's legacy.
So I think one of the things that people don't seem to remember about her, and when they think of the worthy, saintly woman that she undoubtedly was that she was also a very funny woman. Sitting next to her at lunch, you'd be in fits of laughter. It's one of the most painful things now that she's dead, to remember just how the whole if you were having lunch, you'd just be roaring with laughter. She's quick. She had such a lovely sense of humour, and of course all that's gone now. Just so awful.
She was an unusual ambassador for Great Britain, someone who, through the years, even after, I would say, the breakup of her marriage, remained held in very high esteem by people, whether in the United States or whether in Latin America or Southeast Asia.
No, that's absolutely right. And I think that this is something we sometimes tend to forget when people in Britain are doing down the royal family and doing down the duties that they undertake. They are, to have a royal family in this country is extremely helpful and useful for us to project ourselves into the world. People are more interested in Britain because of people like Princess Diana.
For so many years, Princess Diana was, if you will, a bit of a caged bird, but people who knew her, perhaps you can share this with us, had she, since she met Dodi Al-Fayed, become a bit more open, a bit more willing to get on with her life, and really not take into regard so much what are people going to think about this?
I don't think any new change can be dated from having met Mr. Fayed. I think that really all this happened after the divorce, and from the moment that she was stripped of her title, Her Royal Highness, and therefore no longer became royal, except, of course, insofar as she was the mother of the future king. But I think that she obviously had got a new direction. It wasn't to do with men particularly. It was internal. It was just to do with her.
How much was she troubled by the press? She was very aware of the fact that she was a celebrity, that people wanted to see her. But did she feel that it had just become too unreasonable?
Oh, absolutely, yes. They wanted to see her, but not on her terms. She, we've got laws in this country to stop people stalking, but we don't have a law to stop people from shoving camera lenses into your life constantly. I mean, the fact that we're hearing that a man actually took photographs of her shows what scum these people are and how far they will actually just go.
What kind of a debate is there going to be? Will it be much of a debate, really?
There will be, I think, because the Labour Party, which has won the British general elections a couple of months ago, have spoken out in favour of a privacy, some form of privacy law. And if we had the same type of privacy law as they have, say, in France, then Princess Diana would probably be alive today. But we don't, and you're able to do absolutely anything. And she has been hounded literally to death.
We'll have more of our continuing coverage of the death of Britain's Princess Diana in just 2 minutes. I'm Linda Stouffer. This is CNN Headline News. Death of the woman known as the People's Princess. CNN Headline News, I'm Linda Stouffer. The world today is mourning the woman who said she didn't expect to be Queen of England, but she hoped to be a queen in people's hearts. The body of Princess Diana arrived back in Britain about 2 hours ago after she died from injuries suffered in a car crash in Paris overnight. Her companion, Dodi Fayed, died at the scene of the car crash. Prince Charles escorted Diana's flag-draped coffin along with her 2 sisters to a military airbase outside of London. Her body was taken to a private mortuary there. Diana's brother spoke briefly about his deep sense of grief. The crash also killed the driver of the car. Diana's bodyguard survived with serious injuries. French police say the car was going at speeds of up to 85 miles an hour when it careened into the wall of a tunnel. It was being pursued by paparazzi on motorcycles. The body of Dodi Fayed was also brought back to Britain today for burial. French police have launched a criminal investigation into the crash. As Jim Bitterman reports, while people around the world mourn the loss of the beloved princess, they also want to know exactly what caused her death.
Her coffin draped in the House of Windsor's royal standard, the body of Princess Diana was removed from the Paris hospital where she died. Prince Charles and the princess's 2 sisters had arrived only a short time before to collect the body and offer their thanks to the doctors who had tried desperately to save her life. President Jacques Chirac and his wife Bernadette offered their condolences to the prince. The French leader, who had met the princess numerous times over the years during her public and private visits here, ordered a military honor guard to be on hand for the departure of the princess's body. All day long, thousands of people had gathered outside the hospital to express their grief at the news. There was something especially shocking for those here about the sudden death of someone so striking and so young.
This woman was the spokesperson of all the young. She gave hope to all.
Accident in a car accident here, an accident chased by paparazzis or whatever they are. I mean, it's just devastating.
Parisians, too, were drawn to the site of the crash, some looking for a gruesome souvenir. Some looking for ways to express sympathy about the tragedy by building a small shrine at the exact spot where the princess's chauffeur-driven limousine smashed into a pylon in the underground tunnel not far from the Eiffel Tower. Attention here will now focus on the official investigation into the crash. Why was the car in which the princess and her companion were riding hurtling through the tunnel at speeds estimated by police at upwards of 80 miles an hour? And to what extent were the photographers who relentlessly had pursued Diana through her public and private life and ultimately into the tunnel where she was fatally injured responsible for her death? Police investigators are being tight-lipped about their inquiry, which is being handled by the criminal brigade. All day long, they closely questioned 7 photographers who were picked up at the scene of the accident. Given the loss felt around the world and in the corridors of power here, the investigation is being handled at the highest level. Jim Bitterman, CNN, Paris.
The first moment she stepped into the public eye, Princess Diana was mobbed by a swarm of photographers, and they never left her life. Over the next 16 years, they became almost a part of her daily routine, facing her at formal occasions and news conferences, forcing her to dodge them when they tried to get too close, too personal. The National Enquirer's editor is urging publications not to print photos taken just last night that he says are now available for $1 million. People magazine says it, for one, probably will not.
If you had that picture, let us say, the last picture in the car prior to the terrible collision, would you publish it?
Oh, I think it's too early for me to say. We haven't gone to the table.
Really
No,
don't
I do
know?
not think so. I do not think so. I mean, it would seem to be an incredibly poor taste and judgment to do so. And I'll be very curious to see what other publications do with it.
I think that this is enough of a tragedy that it's going to cleanse this renegade behavior from the press in America. Di was beloved. This is a senseless tragedy. There was no need for this. Everyone recognizes that. And once we shut down this small contingent of stockerazzi, life will be back to what it was before.
Condolences are pouring in from around the world, from ordinary citizens to heads of state. People are gathering outside Diana's former Kensington Palace residence and outside of Buckingham Palace, laying down flowers in her memory. Some outside Kensington have been just sitting with their heads in their hands in tears. Parisians have laid red roses at the spot where the car carrying Diana crashed. British Prime Minister Tony Blair remembers Diana as the people's princess.
Our thoughts and prayers are with Princess Diana's family, in particular her two sons, the two boys. Our hearts go out to them. We are today a nation in Britain in a state of shock, in mourning, in grief that is so deeply painful for us.
President Clinton and the First Lady are also mourning Diana's death from Martha's Vineyard, where they're on vacation. Diana was involved in charitable causes such as helping needy children, fighting AIDS, and opposing landmines around the world. Mr. Clinton said he hopes that work continues.
I will always be glad that I knew the princess, and always think of her in very strong and positive terms, as will Hillary. And we can only hope that her work will go forward, and that everyone who can will support her two fine sons and help them to have the life and the future that she would want.
Other Americans are also expressing disbelief over the sudden death of the 36-year-old princess. Jonathan Carl reports from New York.
Witnessed the reaction to Diana's death in the U.S., and it seems the Princess of Wales was American royalty too.
I have such a respect and loyalty to Her Majesty and her royal family, and the loss is very tremendous.
These flowers were left in Diana's name at the British consulate in New York. Across town at H&H Bagels, Di was on everybody's mind.
It's a shame. She did so much for the sick people and the poor people.
For Americans, there are very few heroines, and there are very few heroes, and she was one.
On the newsstand, news about Diana dominated.
One of my friends, a girl, she called me, she was crying, and I said, well, what's up? You don't even know the woman. She said, yeah, but somehow she has touched a lot of hearts, and I guess it's true.
Calls about Princess Di also jammed the phone lines at talk radio station WABC.
How do you react to the death of Princess Diana, Martha?
Very bad. Very bad. I actually was crying.
Americans remember Princess Di for her celebrity. She appeared on the cover of People magazine 43 times, more than any other person. But she is also remembered for somebody who used her celebrity to help others. Jonathan Carl, CNN, New York.
Russian President Boris Yeltsin issued a statement saying Diana was well known and loved by the people of Russia. And a statement from the United Nations says, it's a tragic loss. Her commitment to a ban on landmines brought the issue home to millions around the world. She will be missed. More news after a look at the nation's weather.
I'm meteorologist Dave Hennon with your headlines.
Princess Diana charmed and dazzled photographers, dignitaries, and ordinary people alike with her simplicity and her not-so-royal common touch. But she often overshadowed her husband, Prince Charles, and their fairy tale marriage soon broke down. Princess Diana spoke to the world in a television interview about a third person in her marriage, the woman who had been mistress to her husband for years. A biography of Princess Diana had already exposed details of a tortured life in the confines of the British monarchy. a lonely existence where she suffered from bulimia and even tried to kill herself. Prince Charles admitted publicly to his adultery. Diana also admitted to a relationship while married. But during those difficult times, an even more important relationship was developing for the princess, her love-hate rapport with the press. With the royal divorce officially over a year ago just this week, Diana became an outsider to the palace. She swore she wouldn't go quietly, and the media was her ally in courting the public's favor. She said repeatedly all she wanted was to be the queen of people's hearts.
She'll be remembered as amusing, fun person to be with, and of course she'll be remembered as one of the most beautiful women in the world, one of the brightest stars in our constellation.
So the world's most photographed woman embarked on a single life and established herself as a humanitarian, traveling to Angola and Bosnia, championing causes such as an international ban on landmines.
The world is too little aware of the waste of life, limb, and land which anti-personnel landmines are causing among some of the poorest people on Earth.
She gave comfort to those dying of AIDS and cancer, using her international prestige to bring attention to those in need. But the media was less interested in her charitable work than her love life, and stalked her relentlessly, never giving her a moment's peace, even capturing her grief at her friend Giovanni Versace's funeral. And this summer, when the princess finally seemed to find some happiness with the millionaire playboy Dodi Al-Fayed, the press dogged her every step, following her around the Mediterranean in speedboats, and now it seems following her to an untimely death. Siobhan Darrow, CNN, London.
Around the world, the many admirers of Princess Diana are reacting with shock and sadness to the news of her death. Tearful royal subjects in London have flocked to Buckingham Palace and Diana's residence at Kensington Palace to leave flowers and pay their respects. Flags are flying at half-staff across Britain today as mourners struggle to make sense of her passing. Russian President Boris Yeltsin and Mother Teresa are among the many heads of state and public figures expressing grief over Diana's untimely death. In the United States, well-wishers have made an impromptu memorial at the British Embassy in Washington. They placed flowers there and lit memorial candles for the late princess. President Clinton and the First Lady are mourning Diana's death from Martha's Vineyard, where they're on vacation. Mr. Clinton spoke this morning of his admiration for Diana.
I will always be glad that I knew the princess, and always think of her in very strong and positive terms, as will Hillary. And we can only hope that her work will go forward, and that everyone who can will support her two fine sons and help them to have the life and the future that she would want.
Pictures taken by paparazzi photographers of Princess Diana's death scene are reportedly being offered around the world for about $1 million. That's according to the National Enquirer senior editor, Steve Kaz. He is urging the world press to join the Enquirer in its decision to boycott publication of the photos.
We have refused to buy these pictures. They were offered to us last night. On the world market, they're looking for $1 million. We have refused to buy them, and we're asking that the rest of the world press join us in shunning these photos.
American actor Tom Cruise was interviewed on CNN after the accident, but before Princess Diana's death was announced. Cruise expressed outrage at the tactics some photographers use.
I've actually been in that same tunnel being chased by paparazzis, and they run lights, and they chase you and harass you the whole time. It happens all over the world, and it has certainly gotten worse. And I was absolutely appalled to hear that the Globe would even possibly consider buying the pictures. You know, not only do these guys harass and chase people, but now they're going to benefit financially by having been there and take this photograph. I think what is the world coming to? This is absolutely, it's so disgusting.
Princess Diana is survived by her two sons, 15-year-old Prince William and 12-year-old Prince Harry. They were told of their mother's death by their father, Prince Charles. The three princes have been vacationing at Balmoral Castle, Scotland. Pat Etheridge looks at the grieving process awaiting the royal sons, a country, and the world.
Few images are as haunting as those of children facing the death of a parent. To lose a mother or father is to lose their very world. The core of love and security is suddenly shattered. 15-year-old Prince William and his 12-year-old brother Harry, in the vulnerable throes of adolescence, must now make an even greater life adjustment. Prince Charles woke his sons from their sleep to tell them their mother is gone. Experts on grief advise an honest and direct approach.
The first thing that's important is to be honest with children and to be sure that it's somebody the child knows who discusses the death with the child and not a stranger who breaks the news to them.
I would not hide anything from them in the way of the truth. You don't have to give them more details than they're ready to hear. But if they have questions, then I would answer them all.
Observers have long noted that the royal family is not known for its displays of openness, warmth, or affection. Princess Diana is said to be the one who filled that void for her boys. She was vocal about her love for them and fiercely protective.
As a parent, could I ask you to respect my children's space? Because I brought the children out here for a holiday and would really appreciate the space.
Now, not only must the boys cope with their grief, they must confront it in the harsh glare of the media spotlight.
They will experience the stages of grief, the shock, the numb denial, the searing pain and anger, and ultimately the acceptance at their own pace. Critical to this process is the support of the royal family, a family torn apart by years of strife and discontent.
Continuing the routine offers children stability. When John Kennedy lost his father just before his 3rd birthday, Jackie made sure the party for her son went on. It is difficult to ease the pain of losing a parent, but children are often more resilient than adults.
God knew what he was doing when he made humans, because young children are very tough about these kinds of things. They can deal with a lot of emotions. They have good defense mechanisms.
The passing of a princess and a mother so beloved leaves a hole in the hearts of her young sons. And as they endure the trauma and the pain of their loss, prayers for them are being whispered around the world. Pat Etheridge, CNN reporting.
Stay with CNN Headline News for continuing coverage on the life and the death of Princess Diana. We'll have more news coming up after this check of the nation's weather.
I'm meteorologist Dave Hennon with your Headline News weather. More warm temperatures for Labor Day over a good part of the country, especially in the plains, back down into the southeast. Some 90s over the southern plains and along the Gulf Coast. 100-plus readings are expected in the deserts of the southwest. It will turn cooler, though, back to the northern plains. Highs there will be in the 70s. Forecast weather maps as we take you on into Labor Day. Showers and storms will continue.
They were always so much faster than her, so much quicker. They were always there to grab her most private moments. I can tell you she hated them. She hated them with an absolute passion.
Diana's romantic involvement with Dodi Fayed had brought more tabloid attention in recent weeks. And after the accident that took their lives, the paparazzi has become the focus.
In a fast car, down a dark tunnel, and like JFK's last moments, the cameras were watching.
We'll be back in a moment.
The death of a princess. What will Diana's death mean to her children, including the young boy who will one day be king? Will this tragedy change the way the paparazzi do business? And Diana's lasting legacy to her country and to the world. A Dateline special, Monday at 8, 7 Central.
Now let's take a look at one of the stories we're working on for Dateline Tuesday. He changed the sport of skating forever. Then earlier this year, the devastating news. Scott Hamilton had testicular cancer.
If you find it early, it's nothing. If you find it late, it's pretty unbelievable.
Now for the first time, he's speaking out about his cancer and his career.
What about not skating? What about not going back? Then it wins. Then the cancer wins. No, it's not going to win.
A Dateline People magazine exclusive. The story on Dateline Tuesday. And that's this special edition of Dateline Sunday. Katie Couric will be in London tomorrow on Today, and Tom Brokaw will be there for NBC Nightly News. Stay tuned to your local news for the latest on the Princess Diana story. And coverage of the death of a princess continues on cable on MSNBC with a special Time and Again, a look back at the Diana Spencer we first met and the royal wedding. That's followed by an MSNBC special report. I'm Jane Pauley, and we leave you tonight with Diana as we remember her best.
It's a huge story. It'll be with us for years to come. It's going to have a public impact. It's going to have an impact on the press. It's going to have an impact on how the press goes about doing its business.
Updating you now on our top story, the body of Princess Diana returned to England about 6 hours ago, accompanied by her two sisters and her ex-husband, Prince Charles. He has returned to the royal family's retreat in Scotland to be with his two sons, William and Harry. Diana's body has been moved from a private mortuary to a chapel at St. James Palace. The royal family is expected to announce funeral arrangements tomorrow. The princess, millionaire friend Dodi Fayed, and their driver died early Sunday in a high-speed car crash in Paris. Diana's bodyguard suffered serious injuries in the accident. Those injuries are not considered life-threatening, but he remains in intensive care and his condition is described as grave. Witnesses say Diana's car was being pursued by a pack of press photographers on motorcycles at the time of the accident. Police have detained 7 of the paparazzi and reportedly seized 20 rolls of film from them. Authorities want to know if the photographers may have caused the crash and are said to be examining the pictures for clues to help explain what happened.
So who exactly are these paparazzi? And what... Now, on Impact. She was a glamorous princess who triumphed with her common touch.
With the sick, the dying, with children, with the needy.
She died in tragedy.
I always believed the press would kill her.
Stalked by the circling paparazzi she had come to despise. Tonight, on Impact, a special hour-long look at the triumph and tragedy of a princess. The death of Princess Diana.
Impact, CNN and Time on special assignment with Bernard Shaw and Stephen Frazier. Impact, a collaboration of 2 of the world's leading news organizations, CNN and Time. From Washington, D.C., here's Bernard Shaw.
Welcome to Impact. She was a princess without a kingdom, a fairy tale bride in a marriage doomed by controversy. But she soon established her own realm in the public eye, away from the royal demands of Buckingham Palace. Though her life was cut short, she was a princess to whom the common people willingly gave their hearts. Tonight, Impact is devoted to the life and death of Princess Diana. Diana is back home in Britain now, escorted by her former husband, Prince Charles. Her body has been moved from a private mortuary to St. James Palace, official residence of Prince Charles. Buckingham Palace will announce funeral plans on Monday. What happened to Diana was not supposed to be. What started as an evening fit for princes ended in a high-speed crash with the paparazzi in pursuit.
For Princess Diana, the evening was Paris at its most romantic. Shopping on the Champs-Élysées, dinner at the Ritz, one of the City of Light's most legendary hotels. Diana's companion, Dodi Fayed, the new man in her life and wealthy son of the billionaire owner of Harrods department store. Just after midnight Paris time, they slip away from the Ritz in a hotel car, a Mercedes-Benz. But they cannot evade a pack of photographers on motorcycles. Heading for Fayed's apartment in the West End, they pass through a famous landmark, the Place de la Concorde. From here, they take the expressway along the Seine River. Minutes later, their car races into the Pont d'Alma tunnel underneath the Seine. They are traveling twice the speed limit, photographers chasing in pursuit. The car would never make it to the other end.
Somebody came running towards us, speaking French, shouting in French, and we thought for some reason it was going to blow up in the tunnel.
The first witness on the scene hears a loud screech, what sounds like an explosion, then a wailing car horn.
We heard the screech, and it was, I'd say, about a full, long 5 to 7 seconds, and then we heard the crash.
The Mercedes had hit a concrete divider, flipped and spun 180 degrees. The force of the impact was so great, the radiator ended up in the front seat. The car was crushed like a tin can.
I was one of the first 3 people in the tunnel. The driver was unconscious. I approached the car, got probably 30 feet away, noticed liquid and a gentleman running at me, shouting and waving to leave the tunnel.
The first call to police goes out at 27 minutes past midnight. Before rescue crews arrive, the photographers tailing the princess pounce into action.
The gentleman who was taking pictures was there immediately following the accident.
When police arrive, 2 people in the car are already dead, Fayed and the driver. A bodyguard in the front seat is seriously injured. Princess Diana's injuries are worse. As paramedics rush Diana away, police round up 7 photographers at the scene for questioning.
Now, just into CNN, apparently Princess Diana has been in a serious road accident.
As the princess is sped to the hospital, first news reports begin to come in. The severity of her injuries unclear. It is 2 a.m. Paris time.
The world watches and waits for further word on the condition of Britain's Princess Diana.
At 4 a.m. Paris time, the world learns the worst.
The death of the Princess of Wales fills us all with deep shock and with deep grief.
As word radiates around the world, shock sets in. Some compare it to the day President Kennedy was assassinated.
There is no justice in this world anymore.
By morning, the Pont d'Alma tunnel is open again, and stunned Parisians pay their respects. An elite French police unit, normally deployed to combat terrorism, is investigating this accident. The 7 photographers apprehended at the scene are still in custody. Police may learn what happened in the tunnel from the lone survivor of the accident, Fayed's bodyguard. He is expected to recover. In a moment on Impact, a closer look at the notorious paparazzi. If you want to know more about this story, read Time Magazine this week. Impact, CNN and Time on special assignment. Yet family says he will file a civil suit for invasion of privacy and hazardous action by those photographers. Only last week, Princess Diana said she would leave her country to escape the paparazzi if it weren't for her sons. Serious questions remain about the responsibility of the paparazzi who hounded Princess Diana to the final moment. Here's correspondent Bruce Morton.
She lived in palaces, but she lived always in a glass house, surrounded, a fox with the hounds in full cry. She knew there'd be interest, she said,
But I was not aware of how overwhelming that attention would become, nor the extent to which it would affect both my public duties and my personal life in a manner that's been hard to bear.
She was very, very famous.
Diana's one of our most popular figures. You know, she's been on the cover 47 times. There is a curiosity out there. We aren't The Economist. We're people, and people want to know about her.
As a parent, could I ask you to respect my children's space?
When she asked them to stop, it was no surprise when they refused.
I brought the children out here for a holiday, and we'd really appreciate the space.
Paparazzi are not new. Federico Fellini named a photographer paparazzo in the 1960 film La Dolce Vita, and they've been around ever since, so their equipment is a lot better than it used to be.
You can't do much about the fact that the average tabloid newspaper has its photographer equipped with a telephoto lens, which costs as much as an automobile, and is going to get photographs whether you like it or not.
Arnold Schwarzenegger and his wife Maria Shriver were trapped by photographers while taking their child to school. Jacqueline Onassis got a court order to keep one photographer away. Alec Baldwin won a case against another. And Sean Penn slugged one back in 1987 and did time for it, maybe gladly. The media horde is a fact of life. Remember the scenes at the O.J. Simpson trial? Presidents and political candidates put up with it all the time, but it's a two-way street. They want the coverage, and it's mostly established news organizations who accept limits and don't stalk, unlike the paparazzi. And in Princess Diana's case?
I would say that I always believed the press would kill her in the end. But not even I could imagine that they would take such a direct hand in her death, as seems to be the case. It would appear that every proprietor and editor of every publication that has paid for intrusive and exploitative photographs of her, encouraging greedy and ruthless individuals to risk everything in pursuit of Diana's image, has blood on his hands today.
The judgment of a grieving brother. We don't, in fact, know everything about the accident, and it is certainly true that while Diana sometimes hated the press, she also used it.
She played a cat and mouse game. She used the press, especially the British press. She manipulated it for her own needs, to make her look good and other members of the royal family look bad, namely her former husband, the Prince of Wales.
She used the press, used public opinion to strengthen her hand against the royal family when the marriage ended, to make sure she had enough money to live well on, and perhaps more important, to make sure she could spend a lot of time with her sons. And she did encourage the press when she wanted to.
Yeah, she was hounded, but she opened a Pandora's box by giving them the encouragement, the little phone calls to say, here, that Diana will be seen at, so-and-so place. So she opened the door on that, and she couldn't close it when she didn't want it. She couldn't have it both ways.
And for the media, the tabloids and the rest, she was the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
Even if you got the shot that was going to make you $1 million, I don't know, Princess Diana with a new boyfriend or something like that, there would still be a better shot. The one afterwards, there would be Princess Diana and a new boyfriend kissing, or Princess Diana and a new boyfriend arguing, or, something like that. There's always going to be a better shot with Princess Diana, because she photographs so well, and every single newspaper and magazine is so after the pictures of her.
And now she's gone. Will the paparazzi change their ways? Do we need a law?
I don't know if a law needs to be enacted. I think that this is enough of a tragedy that it's going to cleanse this renegade behavior from the press in America. There's a difference between observing celebrities and hunting them down.
Questions were they asking? Mr. Jewell, let's do the civilized.
Yes, but it isn't always a few renegades. Security guard Richard Jewell was hung out by the FBI, harassed by mainstream media. Will things change?
There is a market out there for these photos. People want to see these in the tabloids, in hard copy, an inside edition. So I think once, if the public is outraged enough to stop buying these magazines or stop watching these programs, then yes, I think you'll see change. But as long as money can be made by both the photographers and the outlets that use their photos, then I don't see an end in sight, really.
Do some celebrities, like politicians, try to use the media? Of course. Do some of the media go too far in tearing privacy to pieces? Of course. There may, on this sad day, be enough blame to go around.
The senior editor of the National Enquirer says photographs of Diana's car accident are being shopped around for as much as $1 million. But the Enquirer says it will neither buy nor print any of those pictures. Stephen?
Bernie, next we turn to those aspects of Princess Diana's life that made her such a popular figure. 2 years ago, Diana said that even if she wasn't to become Queen of England, she wanted to be a queen of people's hearts. To a large extent, she already was. Even after her marriage ended, she continued her good works, thus extending her stature further, from a fairy tale princess to something much more significant, the people's princess. When Diana first entered public view, her beauty and aristocratic birth formed her image. But working people noted with approval that 19-year-old Diana, unlike the royal family she would join, had actually held paying jobs. She'd been a governess for an American family, a part-time cook, and at the time of her engagement was teaching kindergarten.
It was very special to me.
In one of her first joint appearances with the prince, interviewers were fascinated by her work.
I only worked 3 days a week at kindergarten, and the other 2 I looked after an American baby boy.
At the school, she had earned a reputation as hard-working, warm-hearted, and gentle. So gentle, she even cared about the photographers who descended upon her life, warning them before they backed into parked cars. Charles thought she'd get used to the media attention.
In the end, you do get used to it, but I don't know, do you find that after the last 6 months you're beginning to get used to it?
Just.
It is, I suppose, one of the most important things you're going to have to adjust to, really, isn't it?
Well, of course, yes.
And Prince Charles has been a great help to you in that
progression. No, it's a tower of strength.
Precious.
I had to say that because you're sitting there.
Some of Diana's youthful normality was forgotten as Britain fell in love with the idea of majesty.
Here is the stuff of which fairy tales are made. With my body.
300 years had passed since an Englishwoman married an heir to the throne. The country wanted to like her, even anti-royalists.
Well, initially she was the best thing the monarchy had ever discovered. She was this shy teacher of children in an infant school. She had a kind of girl next door haircut. She was softly spoken. She always looked down when she was being interviewed. She didn't look into the camera. And she really won the hearts of the public through this kind of debonair, sort of quiet style.
The royal wedding was the most watched television event in history. It helped unite a nation divided by economic decline.
And the fairy tale then developed because precisely in this sort of story of the prince picking somebody out of obscurity and turning them into a beautiful princess, she really did that. She turned from being the girl next door to something ethereal, something beautiful, and her style and confidence in public blossoming all the time.
Beyond the public stage, though, life was less than perfect, and Diana would begin a struggle that marked her maturation as a woman and as a princess. She learned from friends that her husband was devoted to another woman. They had to continue public appearances together, where their faces gave hints of the strain in their marriage. Years later, Diana revealed details of the personal battles she fought then, how she overcame bulimia, an eating disorder, and impulses to inflict wounds on her own arms and legs. Experiences, she told the BBC program Panorama, that would later make her sympathetic to others in difficulty.
I think the biggest disease this world suffers from in this day and age is the disease of people feeling unloved. And I know that I can give love for a minute, for half an hour, for a day, for a month, but I can give. I'm very happy to do that, and I want to do that.
Privately, she desperately wanted her marriage to work. She tried even harder, she said, because her own parents had divorced. And because she was devoted to her 2 sons, William, the future king, and Harry, 3 years younger. But their personal life was rarely private. Tabloid newspapers chronicled Charles's relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles. The prince's friends told Diana she should be institutionalized.
I'm supposed to be dragged off in a minute with men in white coats, so if it's all right with you, I thought I might postpone my nervous breakdown to a more appropriate moment.
But the breakdown of the marriage was happening without postponement. Diana's friends told a best-selling author the marriage was loveless. He wrote that she was trapped. So intense was the public scrutiny that their separation was announced to Parliament by the Prime Minister.
It is announced from Buckingham Palace that with regret, the Prince and Princess of Wales have decided to separate.
The Queen was not amused.
1992 is not a year on which I shall look back with undiluted pleasure. It has turned out to be an annus horribilis.
Annus horribilis, a horrible year. Later, the Queen wrote Charles and Diana, urging them to divorce. They had both publicly admitted adultery. The soap opera was damaging the monarchy. They agreed to terms, and 1 year ago this weekend were granted a decree of divorce. She could no longer be called Her Royal Highness, but she was still a princess. And instead of sulking, she became an ambassador of goodwill, working on behalf of several causes. Auctioning off part of her designer wardrobe to benefit AIDS and cancer research. Traveling to Bosnia and Angola to comfort children maimed by landmines. All signs that she had emerged from years of adversity and personal struggle, stronger, more concerned about others. Displaying the compassion and common touch other members of the royal family seemed unable to express.
Do you think the monarchy needs to adapt and to change in order to survive?
I understand that change is frightening for people, especially if there's nothing to go to. It's best to stay where you are. I understand that. But I do think that there are a few things that could change, that would alleviate this doubt and sometimes complicated relationship between monarchy and public. I think they could walk hand in hand, as opposed to be so distant.
What are you doing to try and affect some kind of change?
Well, with William and Harry, for instance, I take them around homelessness projects. I've taken William and Harry to people dying of AIDS, albeit I told them it was cancer. I've taken the children to all sorts of areas where I'm not sure anyone of that age in this family has been before. And they have a knowledge. They may never use it, but the seed is there. And I hope it will grow, because knowledge is power.
What are you hoping that experience for your children, what impact that experience will have on your children?
I want them to have an understanding of people's emotions, people's insecurities, people's distress, and people's hopes and dreams.
What kind of monarchy do you anticipate?
I would like a monarchy that has more contact with its people. And I don't mean by riding around bicycles and things like that, but just having a more in-depth understanding. And I don't say that as a criticism to the present monarchy. I just say that as what I see and hear and feel on a daily basis in the role I've chosen for myself.
And that is what defined the final moments of Diana's life, not just the personal happiness and new love she appeared to have found in Dodi Al-Fayed, not just the restored respect she had earned as Britain's goodwill emissary, but the example she provided her sons, teaching them how to be king by temperament as well as by birth, according to the model she was creating as Queen of People's Hearts, the People's Princess. When we come back, how Diana's death will affect the British monarchy.
Impacts, CNN and Time on special assignment. At issue Monday, 8:30 Eastern on CNN.
It's a Chevy trucking.
When she married Prince Charles, Princess Diana brought glamour and a worldwide media glare to the royal family's pomp and pageantry. Her death poses very weighty considerations for Prince Charles and the House of Windsor. Senior correspondent Kathy Slopokin looks at the future of the British monarchy.
I don't think they knew what hit them.
She is the woman who single-handedly shed the dowdy image of the British monarchy. She is also the woman whose popularity shook the royal family to its core.
She came in from the outside and showed the royals she could do their job better.
Diana transformed the popularity of the royal family. She made clear that it had to be loved, that it had to be in the public eye, that it could not coast along in the rather chilly reserve that it had indulged itself, if you like, for years.
Beyond the saga of a fairy tale marriage gone sour, beyond the mutual recriminations, Princess Diana's real contribution may have been to drag the monarchy into the modern age.
I think the legacy may be that she's taken the monarchy from the pre-television age squarely into the television age, where even somebody like Prince Charles, who is by nature stiff, realizes that sometimes he has to use it.
Princess Diana paid the ultimate price for her place in the glare of the public spotlight. The question is, what is left in her wake? The royal family after Diana is a changed institution, singed by the heat of the public attention she attracted. In a tragic way, did Diana's death remove a problem for the British monarchy?
Well, I think there may be some truth in that. There was the perception that she had made the monarchy too media-friendly, too like Hollywood, and too insufficiently royal. I think the second thing about Diana's presence was that she did, in some sense, present a slight obstacle to Charles becoming a good king. She had, after all, told the public that she thought that Charles would be a bad king, and now that she is dead, I'm afraid, tragic though it may be, Charles may have an easier time becoming his own royal, his own public figure, and attracting sympathy in his own turn.
But Diana's death may also make some things harder for Prince Charles. Although it is now legally easier for him to marry his longtime friend, Camilla Parker Bowles, it is by no means certain the British public would accept such a marriage.
24 hours ago, I would have said that the British public would come round fairly quickly to the marriage between Prince Charles and Camilla Parker Bowles. I now think that is much, much harder.
And I think if he was to do anything now which seemed insensitive, which seemed to, for example, if he were to marry Camilla Parker Bowles, his companion of some time, too quickly, that would be a real mistake.
There is another, more personal legacy left by Princess Diana, to her children. Although Charles has introduced his sons to the usual pursuits of the monarchy, Diana was for them a bridge to another world, a world outside the sometimes stifling royal one.
They went to the Caribbean and played on beaches. They went to Disney World. I think they'll miss a little bit of that, because Charles isn't the type of person to take them to Euro Disney.
From their mother, Prince William and Prince Harry have learned the price of rebellion.
Diana was the person who refused to accept the discipline traditionally required of a royal bride. So I think perhaps her children can learn from that. It's not easy to get out of the gilded cage.
The lesson learned by her children may also strike a more direct blow at the heart of the monarchy.
I think her death poses a real problem for Prince William, her elder son, who's now 15. How does he face the press? He may well hate photographers and journalists now. He's been groomed to be king. There's a question, a reasonable question, whether he would still want that job.
Although the public may now rally around the royal family, Diana's absence will be deeply felt. She was shadowed by controversy, but she was greatly loved. There is no doubt Diana is a tough act to follow.
And it's far from clear that the royals have the skill to do what she did. They have many strengths. They have many supporters. They're not big on charisma. How do they win back the place in the hearts of the British public? That's a task they've never been very good at. It's now got harder.
When we come back, some more thoughts on this British monarchy. Can the royals survive without Princess Diana?
Then the whole future looks fairly bleak for the royal family.
Robert Massey, does this royal family have it within its genes to survive?
I think so, Mr. Shaw. The British monarchy has lasted 1,000 years through many ups and downs, many tragedies, many absurdities. I think so. One thing, remember that while Princess Diana was immensely popular and brought a great deal to the royal family, there is still a great deal left. And the royal family in England will go on until the British people don't want it to. And then they'll, as Prince Philip once said, then we'll go quietly.
Margaret Carlson, does the public expect too much?
Well, they certainly expected a lot of Diana and Prince Charles once they became married. They had the most public marriage that we've ever seen. And in various interviews, she said that there were 3 people in the marriage, the 2 of them, and then the press. As her brother said late last night, he always felt the press was going to kill her. And I think that the amount of attention paid to them was so horrific that it was far too much and far too great, and certainly far too much for a marriage to stand.
I would like all 3 of you to chime in and tell our audience, once Prince Charles becomes the King of England, will he always share that throne with the powerful image and memory of Diana?
I think so, if I can speak first. I think that when this kind of thing happens, and when young people are cut down at the peak of their youth and their glamour, as President Kennedy was and as Princess Diana has been, that's the image that we carry with them, and that Prince Charles and the British people, the British royal family, will have to deal with and contend with from now on. I think it's not going to be at all easy for them in a personal sense or in an institutional sense.
I'd agree with that. I think there will be a very long-lasting legacy. I think the princess's image will be with us for a very long time. I'm not sure that's a hindrance to the royal family. I think in some ways her memory will serve as a great asset in the years ahead, particularly as Prince William begins to take on public duties, as he begins to grow more self-assured and start to emerge as an heir to the throne. I think the legacy of Diana will be a formidable tool for the royal family.
Margaret?
Well, she does remain beautiful as the most photographed woman in the world. Now there's been the last picture of her, and so that's how we take her in our mind. I don't think that she works so well for the monarchy now. She became the face of the monarchy, and in fact that probably was one of the factors that put a strain on her marriage. She was so much more popular than her husband. And after their divorce, she became the face of England, if not the monarchy, since she no longer was Her Royal Highness. One of the guests earlier on the program said that it might be more difficult for her to get married, or for him to get married to Camilla Parker Bowles. And I think that is quite the case. A widower married to the most popular woman in the world, perhaps, has a much heavier burden to bear than someone who's divorced and has a wife who goes on to her romantic life and he goes on to his.
Clearly, the preponderance of the news media coverage of this tragedy has dwelt with Diana. But there was another person in that car. There were 3 other persons in that car. I'm alluding to her companion. And Robert Hardman, do you think there'll be a further British coolness toward the Fayette family?
No, I think at this time everyone's thoughts are with all the bereaved. All those involved have gone out of their way to express their condolences for the other parties. Dodi Fayed's family brought his body back tonight, and we're going through the rituals this evening of burial. And I think at this stage, rather like I think when people start discussing, the Prince of Wales's marriage plans to Mrs. Parker Bowles, I think these things just become somewhat irrelevant, really, in the heat of the moment. There is a tragedy for several families, and I don't think anyone wishes to make it worse by starting to bring up other matters that will undoubtedly surface in the future, but for the moment are somewhat misplaced.
One of the key other matters pertaining to what happened in Paris, those photographers. Margaret Carlson, are the paparazzi animals?
Well, they're obviously completely out of hand. Even in this country, where I don't think it's nearly as bad as it was around her, you can get into the middle of one of these photographer scrums
and feel like you're going to be crushed to death because the equipment and the energy they bring to the task is such that nothing else matters, and they trample people. Lots of people think that the benefits of celebrity offset the downside of celebrity. But as we've seen in some of these pictures, you can see that it's one thing to be photographed when you're walking up the steps of a museum to a gala or in any of your official duties or posing, but to have the cameras everywhere you go from morning to night, and to have your car surrounded by people so that you can't move, to yourself be surrounded all the time. It's a very high price to pay, and we may have thought that it just was the price you pay, but as the price for pictures of Princess Diana escalated with her latest romance, one tabloid apparently paid $800,000 for one picture. The enthusiasm with which these paparazzi went to their task was endangered people far more than we would have thought, and a high-speed chase is like the ultimate lunacy.
Robert Hardman, can the public separate the paparazzi from journalists?
I think tonight, certainly all the fingers are pointing at the paparazzi. They are the villains of the piece. But unquestionably, the popular demand for pictures of the royal family and of celebrities generally, sensational pictures, creates this market. One need only look back a few years to when the Duchess of York was caught in a fairly sensational set of photographs on a holiday in the south of France. At the time, people said this is an outrageous intrusion, and yet the paper that bought those pictures for around £1 million sterling had a record sale the following day. It had never sold so many newspapers. So the public is willing to buy it, the papers are therefore willing to buy it, therefore the paparazzi are willing to take the pictures. At some point this vicious circle has to stop. I agree, it is preposterous when you have a horde of Hell's Angels with cameras buzzing a car at 100 miles an hour through a city centre. It's mayhem. But I mean, there are rules, traffic rules at the moment that prevent this sort of thing. It's simply a question of, I think, that the newspapers that at the moment are buying these pictures are going to have to look long and hard before they buy them in future.
Robert Massey, why does the public lump everyone in the news media into the same kettle?
I think that's too bad. I think that I believe with all my heart in the First Amendment, the right of the public to know, and the right of the press to tell. And yet somehow there's a side of me which finds what's happened and what continues to happen revolting. I mean, there is a lower bottom line beyond which newspapers and journalists and photographers, paparazzi or others, shouldn't sink. These are pictures and these are stories and so forth which we really don't need to know. And if there's no decency in the editors, no decency in the staffers, and so forth, I'm an ex-journalist myself, then somebody else has got to impose it on them. I'm not saying the government, but there has to be some kind of imposition of some kind of standards. Maybe, in this case, simply the police. I mean, 100-mile-an-hour chase through that tunnel, which I know, is madness. And as your other guests have said, it's got to stop, and perhaps this will be the thing which will bring that about.
Bernie, in my column this week in Time Magazine, I tried to unlump the press and then lump them back again, in that while the mainstream press doesn't pay for these pictures and we don't engage in some of the worst excesses, we do something like tabloid laundering, which is we take what the tabloids do and write about it, and that way get what we wouldn't write about originally into the magazine, and then we run pictures of the pictures to show how terrible the pictures are. And so we all participate in a way in creating this frenzy.
Robert Hardman, you had some insight about driving skills and the belief in some quarters that paparazzi are not a physical threat, although they are a menace.
They are a menace, absolutely, but there's no question that the 7 paparazzi in pursuit on Saturday night were threatening the princess's life. They were obviously annoying the princess and Mr. Fayed, but other questions have to be asked. Obviously, the bulk of the blame is going to be laid at the door of the paparazzi, with quite considerable justification. But one also has to ask, what is the Princess of Wales and Mr. Fayed doing in a car travelling at that speed? Was the driver trained to do that? We've spoken, my newspaper today has spoken to a number of former royal chauffeurs who've all said that they would never be in a situation like that. You know, the paparazzi are not a threat. They're not terrorists. However much of a nuisance they may be, there are other ways of dealing with them. And if you're handling a situation properly, if you're in contact with the security forces, if these people are presenting a threat, you get on the radio to the police and say, we are being harassed by a bunch of nuts, and can you come and block the road off? Can you come and get rid of them? You don't try and outrace them. You don't try and play Grand Prix drivers at that time of night in a tunnel. And there are many other questions to be asked here. I think the paparazzi obviously are at the root of this, but I think they will be an easy scapegoat. I hope that other wider questions aren't overlooked when we get to the bottom of this tragedy.
Robert Hartman of the Daily Telegraph in London, as we ponder what we just heard you say, we thank you very, very much for staying up so early or late to join us here on Impact. Thank you very much. And we also thank in New York historian Robert Massey, as well as Time Magazine's Margaret Carlson. In a moment, a final look at a princess when Impact continues.
The story continues online. Join our discussion after the program in the Impact Forum at CNN.
On the world at the news of her death shows how thoroughly she succeeded in attaining that goal. We conclude with just some of the outpouring of affection and respect for Princess Diana.
We are today a nation in a state of shock.
Absolutely tragic.
I found her a very graceful person, committed to worthy causes.
I'll always remember that first television news where she held hands with a man with AIDS, and that was the first time you'd ever seen that done without gloves. HIV does not make people dangerous to know, so you can shake their hand and give them a hug.
Diana at 36 had carved out a unique, I think, spot in the hearts of a vast number of citizens of the world.
Tragic loss at a young age of someone who'd shown great courage and commitment in drawing attention to serious issues.
She was unique. She understood the most precious needs of human beings, particularly those that suffered. And her vibrancy and sparkle, combined with a very real sense of duty, are now gone forever. Heartbreaking.
She very kind with all the people, and she very nice. It's tragic that her life ended, and she was a terrific woman.
She was a woman with a massive heart, and she would have done whatever she could to help anybody.
The people everywhere, not just here in Britain, everywhere, they kept faith with Princess Diana. They liked her, they loved her. They regarded her as one of the people.
I felt very sorry for her children and her family.
Obviously, our hearts must go out to William and Harry, these two lads who've lost their mum so suddenly.
The one consolation is that Diana is now in a place where no human being can ever touch her again. I pray that she rests in peace.
Princess Diana, dead at 36. For Impact, I'm Stephen Fraser in Atlanta. Bernie?
Stephen? And I'm Bernard Shaw in Washington. We'll see you next week on Impact.
To purchase a printed transcript or videotape of this program, please call 1-800-CNN-NEWS. For online discussions and a preview of our next program, visit Impact online at cnn.com/impact.
and an entire country tries to come to grips with just what happened and why. Diana, Princess of Wales, gave us so many images to remember. Blushing bride, lonely wife, loving mother, queen of hearts. But tonight we are haunted by horrifying images. The mangled car, the casket, and the question, how did it all come to this? How could this happen to the people's princess? How could we lose her just when it seemed she finally found happiness? How could the fairy tale we all followed end this way?
You know, I've been crying all day yesterday when it happened, and all night.
Now, 48 hours after the accident, there is still a steady flow of tears and flowers in London. Thousands of people continue to gather outside the gates of Buckingham and Kensington Palaces to remember Diana.
This is how I think for any British person coming here, it's very humbling to see how people from all over the world, she was the people's princess. It's like we've all lost a member of our own family. I think that she belonged to all of us more than she did to them.
The funeral will be held on Saturday at Westminster Abbey. At the request of the royal family and Diana's family, her body will not lie in state. Instead, she is being kept in the private chapel inside Prince Charles's palace. Diana will be buried at Althorpe, her family's town north of London.
She'll be returning home, where not long ago she buried her father, and she will probably lie close to her father.
Meanwhile, there was a startling revelation made in the investigation. While most people were quick to point to the paparazzi as the main cause of the crash, Paris prosecutors said the driver of Diana's mangled Mercedes was legally drunk. They say the level of alcohol in his blood was 3 times the legal limit. The driver, Henri Paul, was not Dodi Fayed's regular chauffeur, but contrary to several reports, he apparently was an experienced driver who received special security training by Mercedes-Benz in Germany.
It's ironic, of course, because the public, along with Di's brother and Dodi's dad, were so quick to blame first the paparazzi, then newspaper editors, when in reality, it seems quite a different demon was to blame.
As for the 7 photographers taken into custody, Paris prosecutors said some of them will be formally investigated and perhaps charged with violating France's Good Samaritan law, which requires people to help other people in danger.
Well, interestingly, several of the photographers believed to be involved in the crash were legitimate. They'd covered important international stories like the handing over of Hong Kong and the Gulf War. They were not, as was first believed, sleazy paparazzi.
What is becoming clearer tonight is the senselessness of this tragedy. The fairy tale shouldn't have ended this way. Perhaps Diana and Dodi could have married and lived happily ever after. But tonight, this is the ending we have to live with. The car, the casket, and the mind-numbing question, how did it all come to this? In Paris tonight, police are still trying to figure out exactly what caused the crash that killed Princess Diana, her companion, and their driver. Our Steve Langford is there right now with a look at what would become Princess Diana and Dodi's final 24 hours.
Barry, they came here to Paris for much the same reason that ordinary and extraordinary people alike have always come to the French capital. This city is an incredibly romantic place to get away from it all. Tragically, they died trying.
Di's last day on Earth began in paradise aboard the $25 million Fayed family yacht. The princess had spent a week cruising the Mediterranean with her millionaire boyfriend.
A lot of people think that she was in love with this man. And for the first time, for a long time, she was very, very, very happy.
On Saturday, Di and Dodi climbed aboard the yacht's helicopter, which shuttled them to a private jet in Sardinia. From there, they took the 1-hour flight to Paris.
Definitely the paparazzi knew about their coming.
For 2 hours, they shopped on the Champs-Élysées before they were spotted by photographers. Around 8:30, the reported first chase between the couple and the photographers took place. Dodi and Di fled to the Fayed mansion located just across the Seine River.
The paparazzi are very powerful people. They have contacts in all the big palace hotels.
At approximately 10 in the evening, the couple arrived at the Ritz. Dressed formally in black, they dined in private at the Fayed-owned hotel.
But I think the Ritz is probably more in Paris, the magic place for the stars.
At around midnight, a red Land Rover was used as a decoy vehicle. Then Diana, Dodi, and a bodyguard dashed into their black Mercedes-Benz, driven by the hotel security. But as they took off, the sedan was followed by 7 photographers on motorcycles. The lovebirds could never have known the lethal hand fate was about to deal them.
So they took a driver from the Ritz. It was not the usual driver they had wherever they went on vacation.
Di and Dodi are only 5 minutes away from his place downriver, but by the time they reach this tunnel, the stakes in this chase are dangerously high. The speed's so completely out of control.
The Mercedes crashed into the 13th pillar, then slammed into the tunnel wall. Dodi and Di were not believed to be wearing seatbelts. Dodi and the chauffeur reportedly died instantly in the mangled wreckage of the $120,000 luxury auto. The bodyguard was seriously injured. Princess Diana was rushed to a nearby hospital in critical condition. A team of surgeons opened the princess's chest and literally massaged her heart for 2 hours in a desperate bid to save her. But it was all in vain.
Buckingham Palace confirmed the death of Diana, Princess of Wales.
How Diana's precious life ended could never have been predicted. A horrific auto accident stole the princess of the people, leaving the world in shock and disbelief.
And so this river, always known for its breathtaking beauty, will now be the site of a very sad pilgrimage for millions. Barry?
Thanks, Steve. Later tonight, a look back at Diana's fairy tale life in pictures. Back to you in Los Angeles, Terry.
Thanks, Barry. Some of Princess Diana's more memorable photographs weren't taken at fundraisers or for magazine layouts. They were taken as she spent time with her 2 sons. Tonight, many wonder how the 2 young royals will cope without the close relationship they shared with their mother. It will be the pain felt by young William and Harry that will most tug at our collective heartstrings.
How could they not be devastated? Because they've lost their mother. Not only have they lost their mother, they've lost their best friend, their best person for fun, their best advisor.
In perfectly princely fashion, 12-year-old Harry and 15-year-old William emerged relatively unscathed from the chaos of their parents' public warfare.
She made it very clear throughout the messy divorce that her children were paramount to her, and had they not been, she would have fled Britain a long time ago.
But how can we expect the young royals to cope with the unthinkable, a now motherless existence?
I think William is going to have the hardest job coming to terms with the death of his mother. He's a very sensitive boy. He was very close to his mother. Harry is a sturdy young man, but I think for both of them it's going to be a terrible adjustment.
Prince William and his mother shared an incredible closeness. The young king-to-be offered youthful wisdom to an often needy Diana.
He hasn't lent on her, she's lent on him in a way in the last couple of years because he has been that much older. He was the one who advised her to sell all those dresses. When she lost her title of Her Royal Highness, he advised her on a lot of things.
Whatever emotional weakness Diana endured in her role as princess, she remained always a steadfast mother.
Diana was a lioness when it came to protecting her 2 boys.
When Diana wanted a private vacation with her boys, she was unflappable in protecting the flock from unwanted intrusion.
Out came her hand into the lens of the camera, and she said basically, "Go away."
Could I ask you to respect my children's space?
As for Charles, he takes on a challenge far greater than his princely duties, one as a single father.
Their father had been an extremely important man in their lives, a bond that was already getting more so, I think, since the separation between Diana and Charles can only be strengthened.
Whatever Diana's perceived shortcomings in the eyes of Charles, he cannot deny her the most valuable title of all, devoted mother.
If she wanted to be remembered for one thing that she achieved in her life, it would be as a mother.
Tonight, William and Harry are with their father, Prince Charles, at the family retreat in Balmoral, Scotland. Diana's funeral is scheduled to take place Saturday at Westminster Abbey. We'll be back in a moment with the life and times of the man Princess Di loved so much, Dodi Fayed, when we return with our special report, Remembering Diana.
She was the most greatest lady I ever know in the whole world.
I can't believe that she's gone.
$500 million fortune, Dodi Al-Fayed was never really famous until a few weeks ago. Doug Bruckner has more on the man who became a public figure virtually overnight.
Adding to the tragedy of Dodi Fayed's death is the misfortune that his career as a movie producer will forever be overshadowed by his flamboyant personal life.
Not so well known is the fact that while Dodi was still in his 20s, he was here at LA's Dorothy Chandler Pavilion for the Academy Awards. Dodi's father's money opened doors in Hollywood, to be sure, but people in the industry also credit Dodi's charm and intelligence.
Dodi co-produced Oscar winner Chariots of Fire and went on to produce Hook, FX, and The World According to Garp. It was well known in the movie business that Dodi was heir to the Harrods department store fortune, and with that kind of money, moving in those kind of circles, you do attract a lot of glamorous women. But some think the Playboy tag gives the wrong impression of the man.
He was a kind man, he was a generous man. He wasn't a vicious man in any way, he wasn't unkind.
Dodi stayed on friendly terms with his ex-wife, model Suzanne Gregard, even though their marriage lasted only 8 months. After watching the footage of her former husband, an Egyptian, being laid to rest after a Muslim ceremony, Suzanne was too emotional to speak on camera, but she told Hard Copy she'd been in touch with Dodi during his romance with Di. Suzanne Gregard told us Dodi found the media frenzy troubling, but he told his ex-wife he was so in love with Diana that it was all worth it.
Thanks, Doug. Amazingly, a German tabloid today published a photograph of the wreckage with what appeared to be Di and Dodi still in the car. Now, some of the other stories making news around the nation. Here's tonight's Hard Copy Minute.
Norwalk, California. A freak fatal accident brings holiday traffic to a standstill. It happened after a truck driver lost a small trailer from the back of his rig. By the time he realized it was missing and called cops, 2 people had already been killed when their car crashed into it.
He wanted and deserved. Jerry Penacoli has a look at the life of Princess Diana in pictures.
She was born Lady Diana Frances Spencer in Norfolk, England, 36 years ago. She looked like a princess even then. Little did she know as she grew into her demure demeanor what lay ahead and how the innocence of these early years would be shattered by the sheer nature of her celebrity.
Diana always had a very ambivalent relationship with the press. On the one hand, she needed them for her strength and her power. On the other hand, she greatly resented the press intrusion into her private life.
It all started from the moment she took Charles for better or for worse. She became one of the most photographed women in the world, for better or for worse.
Wherever Diana went, she was followed by dozens of paparazzi, desperately snapping for photos worth tens of thousands of dollars. And they would do anything to get their picture.
There were moments of happiness during that transformation from private person to public princess, but there seemed to be more turbulence than triumph. Despite it, and maybe because of it, Diana became the people's princess. She had flaws, and she wasn't afraid to show them. Penny Thornton was her personal astrologer and knew her well.
She was brave enough to be outspoken, and she was brave enough to tell the truth.
From her philandering prince who put their marriage on the rocks, to her own infidelities she was so honest about. From her battle with bulimia to her reported suicide attempts, Diana showed her human vulnerabilities, but resented the royal restrictions.
At times when there was huge outer pressure sometimes that made her life intolerable. I don't know how many people would have put up with what Diana put up with and put such a brave face on it at times.
After she and Charles separated 5 years ago, she slowly began seeing other men, and even they, for the most part, betrayed her.
If you're going to have a relationship with anyone who's in the public eye as much as she is, it's very difficult for her partner, I'm sure, to put up with those pressures.
Just last year, the dirty divorce finally behind her. Diana is stripped of her Royal Highness title, but not of her dignity. She seemed happier, sexier, freer, and more self-assured than she'd ever been. And she seemed finally happy in love with Dodi Fayed.
Diana was very aware of her own destiny.
Such a tragic end in a Paris tunnel. No family members around her, no fanfare. Much like a Greek tragedy, she died with the man she loved. She was never to be queen, but because of her life of compassion and caring, Princess Diana will always be remembered as she wanted, as a queen of people's hearts.
We want to know your thoughts on the Princess Diana tragedy. Call us at 1-900-268-6868. Each call costs 50 cents.
She's had so much to cope with, and I think that her life has ended, and I'm terribly sorry for the boys. I can't say any more.
I can't believe that she's gone. I think I lost a role model. The Commonwealth has lost a very fine ambassador.
I remember her as a great lady, great mother. She was represented to all the whole world and respected. She was respected as a great lady.
The Queen, who usually addresses the nation only on Christmas, finally shared her feelings about the death of her former daughter-in-law, Diana.
First, I want to pay tribute to Diana myself. She was an exceptional and gifted human being. In good times and bad, she never lost her capacity to smile and laugh, nor to inspire others with her warmth and kindness. May those who died rest in peace. And may we, each and every one of us, thank God for someone who made many, many people happy.
No doubt, the Queen knew this would be one of the most important speeches of her 45-year reign, but the Queen's kind words for Diana are not what matters most now. The future of the British monarchy lies squarely on the shoulders of Diana's sons, William and Harry, and tonight, the world is offering these young men a shoulder to cry on. All of this emotion will certainly intensify with tomorrow's goodbye to the Princess of the People. Let's go to Paris now, where Steve Langford has Diana and Dodi's last moments of happiness caught on tape.
Jerry, it is dramatic, it is touching, and it is haunting seeing the doomed couple just moments before they died. But it is not for sentimental reasons alone that this videotape was released by Dodi's father. This is one bombshell counteroffensive against allegations that the El Fayed family itself was negligent here that evening.
You're seeing Diana, Dodi, and the bodyguard arriving at the Hotel Ritz for dinner. This is the only video diary of the couple's last few hours together.
As a human being, it's a very difficult video to watch. There they are, 4 minutes before their death.
Tonight, Dodi's father, the owner of the Ritz, has released the surveillance tape that documents minute by minute what happened in the hours before the fatal crash.
One of the main reasons for taking the very difficult decision to release this video is that it provides a graphic illustration of the intolerable pressures the princess was subjected to.
This security camera, located outside the front door of the Ritz, shows the Mercedes and decoy vehicle pulling up to the hotel. Then Diana and Dodi are whisked inside.
She looks hassled. She puts her hand up to her face, her head is down. She'd been hassled all day.
They had planned to eat in the main dining room, but their appearance caused such a commotion that it forced the couple to dine in private. Here they are seen headed upstairs. That's Henri Paul, the second in command of hotel security and now infamous driver of the Mercedes, talking with fellow employees in the hotel lobby while Di and Dodi dined upstairs.
He doesn't seem to be drunk out of his mind. As some of his colleagues claimed, they said he was overexcited and drunk as a pig.
This video shows Di and Dodi discussing a plan to leave the hotel unnoticed. A crowd has gathered in front of the Ritz.
It is hard to see photographers in this video. Now, we know we were there, but you cannot see many camera flashes.
One touching moment shows Dodi's arm around Diana as they wait for their ride at a back door.
What this video shows is that in the moments before their death, they were together and holding each other and touching each other. And
a camera in the back alley reveals the couple was about to get in the car and leave without incident.
And when she walks out the back door 5 minutes before her death, you can't see a photographer in sight.
Meanwhile, back at the front door, word spreads that they have slipped out the back, and photographers scramble to their motorcycles to take chase, a chase that ended in a deadly crash.
What it does show is the driver, and that's good for the Al-Fayed family. What it doesn't show is that the photographers were hassling her, although, as I said, she looks hassled.
It is certainly ironic that the best videotape of Dodi and Di comes from the Ritz Hotel itself. Jerry?
Thanks, Steve. Back here in London, the 2-hour procession from Kensington Palace along this route past Buckingham Palace on its way to Westminster Abbey is expected to draw 8 million people. Many of those people are already lined up. But soon, a small village named Althorp will steal the spotlight away from this grieving city. Like tears from heaven, gentle raindrops fall on those making the pilgrimage to Diana's humble hometown and final resting place.
She is our princess.
They leave colorful bouquets and elaborate prose, but it's the simplest rain-speckled memorials from Diana's littlest mourners that seem the most heartrending and poignant.
Don't put the flowers down for Diana.
Diana's family lived in this stately home in the quiet English country village of Great Brington, Northamptonshire. But it's outside these gates where the princess of the people grew into the woman the world would love so very much.
She used to pop up here to the shop to get some chocolate, and she was just a very normal 19-year-old, very shy, very pretty, and with a great sense of fun. You could tell that she was very warm and caring.
Another villager remembers Diana returning here for her brother's wedding.
There certainly was like an aura of some kind, you know, or something quite special. If I had known who it was, you'd still kind of say, wow, you know, it was really, really quite extraordinary.
And it was here 5 years ago that a heartbroken Diana returned to bury her father, Earl Spencer, the man who stepped tentatively into the world spotlight when he gave her away in the wedding of the century. Tragically, now Diana will make her final journey to join her father and 20 generations of Spencers in a lush graveyard kissed by those gentle raindrops.
People will flock here, not only from England, but from all over the world.
And some fear that will change this tranquil haven forever.
It's going to be awful.
It's just a little quiet country Northamptonshire village, and that's the way the locals would want it to be.
Some have even mentioned the dreaded G word, Graceland, comparing the changes to this quaint town to the transformation Memphis went through after the death of Elvis.
This is a term that we're trying desperately not to use too often. We have to wait and see, don't we?
But whatever happens to Great Brington, everyone here wants Diana to return home for eternity.
This is where she belongs, so it's entirely appropriate that this is where she should be.
The effect that this has had on people the world over is truly overwhelming. Of course, we're going to be here in London and in Althorp throughout the weekend to bring you the very latest on Diana's final farewell. Terry?
Thanks, Jerry. Ironically, the woman who inspired many of Princess Di's good deeds, Mother Teresa, passed away today at the age of 87 after a lifetime of charity work. Diana herself was a woman of a million pictures, but few words. Coming up, the princess's final television interview as she crusades against the deadly landmines killing children in Angola.
I'm so horrified by the scale of destruction. Well, obviously, being a mother of 2 boys, one wants to go out and help these children. It's been very sad what I've seen. I mean, terribly sad.
Her sincere concern, her mission of mercy, Diana in her own words. Passionately about. One of those issues took her to Angola, where children are hurt or killed every day by abandoned landmines. Diana's mission of mercy became the subject of her final TV interview.
I think the lasting image is of a country that's full of treasures, of a determined and humble people striving to make it a better place.
It was Princess Diana in her own words, as we rarely got to see or hear her, unfettered by paparazzi or by Buckingham Palace. A very determined, very mature Diana, speaking out about an issue that made her passionate.
On my way from the airport, I began to see the effects of 30 years of conflict on this country. I'd read the statistics. that Angola has the highest percentage of amputees anywhere in the world. That one person in every 330 has lost a limb, most of them through landmine explosions. But that hadn't prepared me for the reality. I've never seen things like it before. I've never been in this environment. But very humble.
For 3 days, a video crew followed her to Angola on a mission of mercy to end the scourge of landmines in war-torn countries. As it turns out, this BBC documentary would be Diana's last open letter to her public.
It's compelling on many levels. It's very haunting that we're hearing her voice. This is Diana being her own person, and had she lived, we would have seen Diana in this role a lot more. Sadly, we won't now.
This wasn't an easy, safe photo opportunity in the heart of London. It was a journey into a ravaged country filled with suffering. Some of what Diana saw was too gruesome for us to show you, but nobody tried to shield the princess, and she wouldn't have allowed it anyway.
The next patient I met was Sandra de Chica. Will you ask her where the mine was?
She was trying to get some food with her mother when she stepped on a landmine.
How long has she been waiting for a procedure?
She's waiting for the prosthesis for about 3 years.
13? So presumably between 13 and 20, she'll have to have how many procedures? Every 6 months, she has to have a new one. Will you ask her how she feels about this?
She's okay.
Will you say to her, I hope she doesn't mind us all seeing you here? I thought Sandra was particularly courageous because we all descended on her. And I think it's very daunting for her to have a camera, let alone 30, 40 cameras on her. But I did ask her, I tried to reassure her that this was going to help other children around the world, and she seemed happy and understood the situation. But there again, it does raise the trauma of what this little girl's going through. But there again, she was happy to do it, and it made us much wiser to her extent of her injuries. Being a mother of 2 boys, one wants to go out and help these children, and particularly in the case where little people have lost their legs. Part of their future's been taken away. You asked him to smile too, otherwise I am the most upset.
It was a mission of mercy. But while Diana risked her life in Angola's killing fields, her political enemies in London were plotting. And before it was over, Diana would be forced once again to defend her actions to the world.
I'm not a political figure, nor do I want to be one, but I do come with my heart, and I want to bring awareness to people in distress, whether it's in Angola or any part of the world.
When we return, Diana discovers the trials and tribulations of her work as she encounters harsh words from her own countrymen.
Now, the government minister has said you're a loose cannon. Do you have any reaction to that?
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're...
And a well-meaning princess shows her frustration.
Oh, my really makes me burst into tears. Who said I'm a loose cannon?
Diana's mission of mercy continues next.
The government minister's home has said you're a loose cannon by supporting this campaign. Do you have any reaction to that?
Again, I'm only trying to highlight a problem that's going on all around the world. That's all. Oh, my really makes me burst into tears. Who said I'm a loose cannon? The fact is, I'm a humanitarian figure, and always have been, and always will be. I'm very happy to do photo calls if it raises the issue of the dilemma in the country, but only on that basis. I'm here to raise the awareness, and it's certainly nothing in it for me. It's for the people in the country that I'm visiting.
It was easy to see the anguish Diana felt as she met with the innocent victims of war. But there were lighter moments too. At a clinic filled with healthy babies, Diana's sense of humor radiated.
This is my look.
Other way.
How long is it going to be left hanging for? Gosh, it weighs a ton. What's she feeding this young man on? He weighs a ton.
The most dangerous part of her journey came when Diana put on protective gear and went out into the killing fields with a bomb squad to detonate live landmines. And one of the most heartbreaking moments occurred when Diana came face to face with a young girl who suffered a ghastly injury because of a mine.
What's happened here? It's been very sad what I've seen. I mean, terribly sad. Thursday I saw a young girl who'd stepped on a mine and her intestines had been blown out. Although her bones were all right, the other parts of her body needed to heal if they were going to, and that was very traumatic as a mother to witness that.
If one theme runs through all of the causes Diana championed during her lifetime, it was this: compassion for the suffering. In this video, she revealed her compassion in a most extraordinary way, and we are left to wonder what might have been.
Anything you can hang on to is your own dignity, because nobody can take that away. Everything else can be taken away, but not that.
We'll be back in a moment.
She adored her boy, and I think that it's just an absolute tragedy. So we've come here, especially to pay our respects.
You into fly gear? Get into this. Sprite is giving away the flyest fashions out. You know, the hype gear that's blowing up the spot, like Shabazz Brothers, like Fishpaw. You can get laced. Best part of all you have to do is keep on doing what you're doing. Obeying your thirst. Word. The more Sprite you drink, the more chances you have to win. So check under your Sprite cap. You might have already won some.
If you've been injured in an automobile accident, you deserve experienced representation for a reasonable fee. I'm James Chambers, and our fees are 1/3, and we advance all case expenses. In addition, we never charge to help you with your property damage or your no-fault benefits, and of course, we never get paid until you do. Give us a call. We want to be your lawyer.
For a long time, alcohol was fun until it stopped working. I knew that I needed help and that alcohol hadn't worked for a long time.
When you're ready to get help, Charter is here, and you can call us anytime.
There are outpatient services, evening services, day programs, not just inpatient.
And it's sort of like I feel like I have another chance. I have another chance.
Don't wait to call. If you don't get help at Charter, please get help somewhere.
Stewart Promotions presents the Lexington Antique and Flea Market this weekend in the newly expanded Heritage Hall at Lexington Center. Shop over 250 booths of antiques, collectibles, glassware, books, collector cards, arts and crafts, and jewelry, from costume jewelry to the finest 14-karat gold. Something for everyone. Shop 3 big days, Friday and Saturday 11 to 7 and Sunday 11 to 5. Plenty of convenient parking in the Cox Street parking lot under the overpass next to Lexington Center. Admission to the Lexington Antique and Flea Market is absolutely free. A Stewart promotion.
There's so much strength in numbers, every woman, child, and man. It's the moment that you think you can, you'll discover that you can. Feel alive, teaching lessons we love, the power of the dream.
We've just come to pay their respects to Diana, and it just shows just how much that just by being herself, she just basically touched all the people's hearts. I think they're talking about London's never seen anything like it for 50 years, but I don't think London's ever seen anything like it.
We're absolutely devastated. I think the whole of the nation really looked upon her as the Queen.
The Son and the Holy Spirit be with you and all you love, now and forevermore. Amen.
Let us commend our sister Diana to the mercy of God, our Maker and Redeemer. Diana, our companion in faith and sister in Christ, we entrust you to God. Go forth from this world in the love of the Father who created you, in the mercy of Jesus Christ who died for you, in the power of the Holy Spirit who strengthens you. At one with all the faithful, living and departed, may you rest in peace and rise in glory, where grief and misery are banished, and light and joy evermore abide. Amen. And that, on videotape, was the entire funeral service without interruption and, for that matter, without commentary. The funeral service is long over here at Westminster Abbey. The crowds have now dispersed. The long goodbye to Princess Diana is over. The funeral cortege followed a long and winding road up to her final resting place. It is not, in fact, there yet. Her final resting place will be on the land of her ancestors at Althorp. From here at Westminster Abbey, the cortege passed back by Buckingham Palace, Wellington Arch, Hyde Park Corner, and then took the 6-lane M1 motorway, the 50-plus miles north of London, to Althorp. This is the latest picture of the hearse and what's left of the cortege making its way up. As has been mentioned before, and perhaps you already know, but if you've joined us late, perhaps not, that a change was made as to where Princess Diana is to be buried. It will be on a small island in the middle of a lake on the land of her family, instead of, as was first announced, in the small village nearby. Now, we want to go back to some of the highlights and memorable moments that happened on this day in London before the cortege got here to Westminster Abbey. One scene that is burned in one's memory is that of the Queen watching the funeral cortege pass Buckingham Palace. Ingrid Seward of Majesty Magazine, your thoughts about this picture as you see it replayed.
In her long reign, but I think this must have been one of the most difficult for her, because there's the body of her former daughter-in-law, so young, so fair, and so tragic. But of course the royal family are brilliant at keeping their emotions under control, and this is one of the complaints we've had, I think, from the people of Great Britain, is that they wanted them to show more emotion. But there she is with her sister, Princess Margaret. And
standing there with the Queen Mother, one is reminded the Queen Mum was alive when Teddy Roosevelt was President of the United States at the turn of the century.
I mean, the Queen Mother's seen more deaths than anyone, hasn't she? More funerals.
And David Starkey. The Queen Mother stood for something very different. She stood, like the Queen herself does, for putting up even if a marriage went wrong. Diana was wonderful as a person, but the Queen must have had, let's be frank, terribly, terribly mixed thoughts when she was looking at that. Her hopes that that marriage would be the future of the monarchy, both in terms of an heir and also in terms of a new relationship between a Prince and Princess of Wales, were shattered once by the divorce, and they've been shattered horribly, horribly today. I think all we can hope is that, as you said yourself earlier, Dan, that some sort of reconciliation will come out of this. It was still clear at the funeral service there's a lot of bitterness, a lot of hurt still to be overcome.
Now we go from videotape live to Althorp, where what's left of the cortege, mainly the hearse and the protective motorcycle outriders and remnants of the motorcade itself, arrive at Althorp. We'll segue from this live picture to videotape back of earlier today, the clump of the horses, that almost eerie, respectful silence of the crowd, and the moment when the two princes fell in with their father and Prince Philip behind the coffin. David Starkey.
It's obviously the most touching moment, I think, for anybody, watching the two boys with their father and their uncle and their grandfather about to march behind the coffin of their mother. But this is also, of course, the point where the procession changes its nature completely, from ceremonial, from military, to the incredibly personal. Personal not only in terms of Diana's own relationships, but also, of course, all the charities are going to join behind. And striking too there, you actually saw Earl Spencer crossing himself
my understanding is that Earl Spencer has actually converted to Roman Catholicism. In the same way, there were strong rumors that Diana, partly under the influence of Mother Teresa, partly as a result of conversations with the Cardinal Archbishop of Westminster, the Catholic Archbishop of Great Britain, would actually convert too. It didn't happen, of course, but her affinity with the more emotional, passionate religion of Roman Catholicism was very clear.
Ingrid Seward, was there ever any real chance that Princess Diana would convert from the Anglican Church to Roman Catholicism?
Well, we must remember that Diana did find happiness in the last weeks of her life with Dodi Fayed, who was a Muslim, so I think probably unlikely. But I think that Diana wanted to embrace all religions, and I think perhaps it would have been easier for her just to remain as Diana, just as Church of England, and embrace them that way, rather than making a statement of converting.
Rather in that way, like Prince Charles, it's one of the many things, it's the extraordinary thing about Charles and Diana. When you actually look at it, they had so much in common. This interest, again, in bringing faiths together.
They did indeed, and one thing that I think Diana was very anxious for the world to know was that her husband did love her. There's been all kinds of stories for many years that they had a loveless marriage. They didn't have a loveless marriage, and I think that's very important, that she feels she wants the world to know that, particularly for her boy's sake.
Let's pause and, insofar as is possible, ponder the moment on videotape. Do not be misled by the sign that says live up in the right-hand corner. This is videotape from the time when it was live. Notice on the left-hand corner, farewell to a princess. Videotape. This happened several hours ago. Let us just for a moment watch and listen. Now, in the corner of your screen where it says live, these are live pictures as the hearse arrives in Norfolk. Ingrid Seward, what a long, long walk it was for all of the family, but especially for these boys. I'm reminding myself, as one must, because they were steady all through this, that they are, after all, still children. And
Yes,
they
but
are children who have lost their mother.
I'm sure everybody noticed that Prince William never raised his head once. He looked so like his mother, with his head bowed, looking at the ground how she used to. And I think that's just his way of dealing with this. I don't think he could bear to raise his eyes and look at the crowd for fear of losing his composure. But they were just amazingly composed, and a tribute to their mother by being so.
Now live at Althorp, as the hearse speeds through the village and the country road to the Spencer estate, the boys, William and Harry, are with the body of their mother. The Queen and Prince Philip have gone back to Scotland, or on their way back to Scotland.
I think they're on the royal train. I think they've gone back to Scotland by train.
Let's talk a moment about the Spencers. We've said this is their ancestral ground. True or untrue, Ingrid Seward, that Princess Diana had as much royal blood as Prince Charles?
I think you should ask Dr. Starkey about this, but yes, indeed, I think he's probably better equipped to answer the historical aspects of this.
Well, Diana had a great deal of royal blood. Unfortunately, if you actually look at her genealogy, Dan, it's got a wiggly line on it, and that means they were all illegitimate descendants of Charles II, 3 times over. But the main line of the old royal house, that's going right back to the Tudors, also goes into Diana's blood through the Seymour family, the family of Henry VIII's third queen. There's another thing, though, I think. We talk always about men as ancestors. The ancestors of Diana's that I think we should be concentrating on are 2 absolutely amazing women, very like her. Sarah, Duchess of Marlborough, who was effectively a kind of deputy prime minister of England in the reign of Queen Anne, when her husband, the Duke of Marlborough, is away winning England's victories against the French. And also a woman astonishingly like Diana. Georgiana, who married the Duke of Devonshire, that's to say she was a Spencer before she married the Duke of Devonshire, and she was like Anne, she was sexy, she was magnetic, she was brilliant, and she used all of these things, Dan, to woo the people, to wow the people. She was known as the Kissing Duchess and went round kissing common folk to get them to vote for her political party. I'm sure Tony Blair only wishes that Diana had survived to do the same thing for him.
What just passed by in this live picture from Althorp, part of the gently rolling countryside. This is where Diana's final resting place will be. Deep beyond those trees is a small lake. In the middle of the lake, a small island, and that's where her grave will be. Here in London, the sun still shines brightly. A few clouds moving in now. I notice in Althorp, some clouds are moving in. If this royal drama had been written by Shakespeare, the skies would be raining now, like the tears that fall on Britain today, but the sun is shining as bright as Princess Diana's smile. You're watching CBS News live coverage of the funeral of Princess Diana. Still atop the royal standard draped coffin, the flowers placed there by the boys.
The little wreath at the front, Dan, we could actually see it when we had a close-up on it. It has handwritten on it, Mummy.
Through the gates of the estate. Ingrid Seward and David Sarkey, we've been talking about the Spencers, about the royal family. We'll come back quickly, at least, to something we touched on earlier. There's been this resentment, if not outright hostility and anger, toward this royal family for what was at least perceived insensitivity. How important is it, or is it important, that we make a difference between how people feel about this particular set of royals and the monarchy as an institution?
I think it is very important that we remember that monarchy is a very ancient institution, Dan. It survived 1,200 years, 1,000 years nearly, since William the Conqueror was crowned here first. And monarchy probably will survive. But equally, it has to be reinvented each generation. New personalities have to be found that can carry it forward. The tragedy for this monarchy is that Diana, who in almost every way was perfectly suited to the role, finally clashed so bitterly with Charles, leaving such a legacy of mistrust, which was articulated very bluntly in his funeral tribute by Earl Spencer. I think what we've got to hope is that everybody who values William as Diana's son and heir will remember that if they attack Charles as savagely as they're doing, they're making William lose two parents. He's lost his mother. Do we really want to continue attacking his father as cruelly as he has been?
I think, Dan, that Diana tried to alter the monarchy in her life, but perhaps what we're seeing now is that her death will alter the monarchy. I think they will respond to the people more readily. I think they have to, and I believe it's Prince Charles that will lead the way in this case. It's very difficult for the Queen to change. The Queen Mother at 97 is never going to change, and Prince Charles is the way forward, and I think we, the British people, need to give him the opportunity to do so. I think he does want to change things. He does feel some of it's an archaic institution.
What about Prince Charles? Your personal opinion, is he likely or unlikely to become yet King of Great Britain?
Well, I'm a great fan of Prince Charles, and I think he has it in him to be a very good king. He's above politics, he's without personal ambition, and he cares about the environment. That's what we need. He is a modern thinker. He may not look a modern man, but he is a modern thinker, and I think he's very much a prince for the 21st century, and hopefully a king.
Need to take a break, but don't want to pass without asking you, David Starkey.
I think, again, Charles will probably succeed To be blunt, remember, we British are fond of inertia. We rather like things more or less as they have been. We don't want too much modernity too quickly. Charles is about the right mix.
One thing that you may have noticed, if we can get the videotape up quickly, when the boys were walking behind that coffin of their mother this morning, William 15 and Harry 12, they looked for the whole distance of the walk, neither left nor right, nor very far ahead. They looked at the steps immediately in front of the ones they were taking, one step after another. The courage of children is always a mystery to adults. We don't remember where they find the strength to face tragedy, but find it they do. And these boys, these children, Prince William and Prince Harry, found it today. Our CBS News coverage of the farewell to the princess will continue in a moment.
What's wrong?
It's not the machine's fault you're getting spots, man.
Well, go on, tell her. Tell her!
You're not using Jetra.
Here inside Westminster Abbey today was unquestionably delivered by Charles, the Earl Spencer, Princess Diana's brother. It had eloquence and also had stingers, which, rightly or wrongly, took many people aback. It got applause from some of those assembled on the outside of the Abbey as they heard what he had to say. So let's replay what Diana's brother had to say as he faced the royals, the Queen, and others inside the Abbey today.
I stand before you today, the representative of a family in grief, in a country in mourning, before a world in shock. We are all united, not only in our desire to pay our respects to Diana, but rather in our need to do so. For such was her extraordinary appeal, that the tens of millions of people taking part in this service all over the world, via television and radio, who never actually met her, feel that they too lost someone close to them in the early hours of Sunday morning. It is a more remarkable tribute to Diana than I can ever hope to offer her today. Diana was the very essence of compassion, of duty, of style, of beauty. All over the world, she was a symbol of selfless humanity, a standard bearer for the rights of the truly downtrodden, a very British girl who transcended nationality, someone with a natural nobility who was classless, and who proved in the last year that she needed no royal title to continue to generate her particular brand of magic. Today is our chance to say thank you for the way you brightened our lives, even though God granted you but half a life. We will all feel cheated, always, that you were taken from us so young, and yet we must learn to be grateful that you came along at all. Only now you are gone do we truly appreciate what we are now without, and we want you to know that life without you is very, very difficult. We have all despaired at our loss over the past week, and only the strength of the message you gave us through your years of giving has afforded us the strength to move forward. There is a temptation to rush to canonize your memory. There is no need to do so. You stand tall enough as a human being of unique qualities, not to need to be seen as a saint. Indeed, to sanctify your memory would be to miss out on the very core of your being, your wonderfully mischievous sense of humor with a laugh that bent you double, your joy for life transmitted wherever you took your smile and the sparkle in those unforgettable eyes, your boundless energy which you could barely contain. But your greatest gift was your intuition, and it was a gift you used wisely. This is what underpinned all your other wonderful attributes. And if we look to analyze what it was about you that had such a wide appeal, we find it in your instinctive feel for what was really important in all our lives. Without your God-given sensitivity, we would be immersed in greater ignorance at the anguish of AIDS and HIV sufferers, the plight of the homeless, the isolation of lepers, the random destruction of landmines. Diana explained to me once that it was her innermost feelings of suffering that made it possible for her to connect with her constituency of the rejected. And here we come to another truth about her. For all the status, the glamour, the applause, Diana remained throughout a very insecure person at heart, almost childlike in her desire to do good for others, so she could release herself from deep feelings of unworthiness, of which her eating disorders were merely a symptom. The world sensed this part of her character and cherished her for her vulnerability, whilst admiring her for her honesty. The last time I saw Diana was on July the 1st, her birthday in London, when typically she was not taking time to celebrate her special day with friends, but was guest of honor at a fundraising charity evening. She sparkled, of course, but I would rather cherish the days I spent with her in March, when she came to visit me and my children in our home in South Africa. I am proud of the fact that, apart from when she was on public display meeting President Mandela, we managed to contrive to stop the ever-present paparazzi from getting a single picture of her. That meant a lot to her. These were days I will always treasure. It was as if we had been transported back to our childhood, when we spent such an enormous amount of time together, the two youngest in the family. Fundamentally, she hadn't changed at all from the big sister who mothered me as a baby, fought with me at school, and endured those long train journeys between our parents' homes with me at weekends. It is a tribute to her level-headedness and strength that despite the most bizarre life imaginable after her childhood, she remained intact, true to herself. There is no doubt that she was looking for a new direction in her life at this time. She talked endlessly of getting away from England, mainly because of the treatment that she received at the hands of the newspapers. I don't think she ever understood why her genuinely good intentions were sneered at by the media, why there appeared to be a permanent quest on their behalf to bring her down. It is baffling. My own and only explanation is that genuine goodness is threatening to those at the opposite end of the moral spectrum. It is a point to remember that of all the ironies about Diana, perhaps the greatest was this. A girl given the name of the ancient goddess of hunting was, in the end, the most hunted person of the modern age. She would want us today to pledge ourselves to protecting her beloved boys, William and Harry, from a similar fate. And I do this here, Diana, on your behalf. We will not allow them to suffer the anguish that used regularly to drive you to tearful despair. And beyond that, on behalf of your mother and sisters, I pledge that we, your blood family, will do all we can to continue the imaginative and loving way in which you are steering these two exceptional young men, so that their souls are not simply immersed by duty and tradition, but can sing openly as you planned. We fully respect the heritage into which they have both been born, and will always respect and encourage them in their royal roles. But we, like you, recognize the need for them to experience as many different aspects of life as possible, to arm them spiritually and emotionally for the years ahead. I know you would have expected nothing less from us. William and Harry, we all care desperately for you today. We're all chewed up with sadness at the loss of a woman who wasn't even our mother. How great your suffering is, we cannot even imagine. I would like to end by thanking God for the small mercies he's shown us at this dreadful time, for taking Diana at her most beautiful and radiant, and when she had joy in her private life. Above all, we give thanks for the life of a woman I'm so proud to be able to call my sister, the unique, the complex, the extraordinary and irreplaceable Diana, whose beauty, both internal and external, will never be extinguished from our minds.
And that was it. Everybody understands Diana's brother's grief and his anger growing out of that grief. But this was perhaps the most provocative and political funeral oration delivered in Britain since Mark Antony stood over the body of Julius Caesar at the Globe Theatre. It had two heavy shots, one directed at the royal family, the other at the press. Tom Fenton at Buckingham Palace. Is it possible that we saw here the launch of a political career? He wouldn't be the first politician to start by attacking the press and the powers that be.
Oh, I think he's unlikely to get into politics. What I think has happened, though, is politics has gotten into the royal family. The royal family now realizes that it has to get closer to the people. It may be too early, or sorry, you see behind me a little bit of the old royal family. That's the sort of pomp and ceremony and precedence that people now think is a little old-fashioned. The question is whether the royal family can modernize itself. It's a little late for the Queen, perhaps. Prince Charles has had a very salutary lesson this week. He sees the dangers when the royal family seems to be too aloof, and certainly young Prince William, who had 15 years of guidance from his mother Diana, will be, in all probability, if he makes it to the throne, a thoroughly modern king. But still, we have the pomp.
Mark Phillips at Hyde Park, give us your perspective on this extraordinary for a funeral oration talk that was delivered by Diana's brother today.
Well, the oration, which also had an extraordinary reaction, of course, applause from the assembled multitudes who had heard it. This was a tribute delivered by clearly a loving brother, but also a very angry and bitter man, singling out the royal family, referring to the fact that Diana didn't need a royal title. Of course, the family had taken away her title as one of the conditions of the divorce. The divorce worked out between her lawyers and the royal family's lawyers, so she was no longer HRH, Her Royal Highness. Clearly that stung. The other, of course, being the criticism of the tabloid press, which the Earl Spencer has believed and said from the beginning of this tragedy, which he believes had hounded her to her death. He also, it was a way as if he was saying, as the now patriarch of the Spencer family, we gave you the jewel of our family. We gave you Diana. We gave her to the House of Windsor, and we gave her to the country, and you both destroyed her, and now we're taking her back. That's what he was saying, Dan.
Mark Phillips, thanks. The First Lady of the United States, Hillary Rodham Clinton, issued a statement at Winfield House, the residence of the American ambassador here. And it says in part, on behalf of the President and the American people, I came here to express our deep sadness at the loss of Diana. She did hard work in difficult places, and she softened hearts and lifted spirits. We can honor Diana's memory by continuing her work. Having said that, the spoken word that riveted everyone inside and outside Westminster Abbey today were those words spoken by Diana's brother. The music that riveted everyone, young and old alike, was that of Elton John. And this was the moment earlier today inside Westminster Abbey when Elton John began to play.
Goodbye, England's rose. May you ever grow in our hearts. You were the greatest place to set where lives were torn apart. You called out to our country and you whispered to those in pain. Now you belong to heaven and the stars spelled out your name. And it seems to me you lived your life like a candle in the wind, never fading with the sunset when the rain set in. And your footsteps will always fall here along England's greenest hills. Your candles burned out long before your legend ever will. Loneliness we've lost, those empty days without your smile, this torch we'll always carry for our nation's golden child. Even though we try, the truth brings us to tears. All our words cannot express the joy you brought us through the years. And it seems to me you've lived your life like a candle at the wind, never fading with the sunset when the rain set in. And your footsteps will always follow you along England's greenest hills. Your candles burned out long before your legend ever will. Goodbye, England's road, may you ever grow in our heart. You were the greatest place to set us where life was torn apart. Goodbye, English road, from a country lost without your soul, who missed the wings of your passion more than you will ever know. And it seems to me you've lived your life like a candle in the wind, never fading with the sunset when the rain set in. Footsteps will always follow you along England's greenest hills. Your candles burned out long before your legend ever will.
Elton John from earlier. David Starkey, the steward, thank you very much for being with us this morning. And we'll see you again tonight. The reason I say that is CBS News will have a special 1-hour program tonight beginning at 7 in the Central Time Zone. Farewell to the Princess. That'll be 8 in the East, 7 in the Central Time Zone, a special hour tonight. And so Britain says goodbye to a princess who belonged not just to this nation, but to the world. It is in the nature of modern life that by the time a great event has arrived, there's almost nothing left to be said about it. So it is with the funeral of Princess Diana. She was lovely, she is gone, and what more can be said? Already the death of another great lady, the inspirational, compassionate Mother Teresa, demands our attention. What any American must say who has been here all this past week is this: the great British people, who are more than allies to America, have been profoundly touched by the loss of their princess, touched and changed. You can't walk along the streets, listen to the radio, ride the bus, or sit in the park without feeling the difference. They had come to feel that Diana was in recent years changing too, finding her heart, enriching her soul, focusing on her best purposes. Her people have been cheated of the opportunity to know the woman she might have become, cheated of the opportunity to tell her how they felt about her. All this week, they have told her. And they've told us. They have flocked to this capital to pay their respects. They have offered up flowers, tears, and silence. They have sought to comfort the bereaved and themselves. and they still throng the streets of London. They were here all of last night. They've been here all morning. They slept last night huddled on the sidewalks, and they sang in the darkness. Amazing grace. They told stories, shared memories, and stood, as the British always somehow stand, firm and steady. For CBS News, Dan Rather in London. I'll see you tonight.
This is CBS.
CBS News Special.
Goodbye, rose. May you ever grow in our hearts. You were the great lace cells where lives were torn apart.
This is Dan Rather in London. Please join us as we say farewell to a princess.
To those in pain, now you belong to heaven, and the stars spell out your name. And it seems to me you lived your life like a candle in the wind, never fading with the sunset when the rain set in. And your footsteps will always fall here along England's greenest hills. Your candles burned out long before your legend ever will.
Tonight, as the world says a final goodbye to Diana, Princess of Wales, we'll remember her extraordinary life with the help of the people who knew her best.
Those empty days without your smile, this torch will always carry for our nation's golden child. Even though we try, the truth brings us to tears. All our words cannot express the joy you brought through the years. And it seems to me you've lived your life like a candle in the wind, never fading with the sunset when the rain set in. And your footsteps will always fall here along England's greenest hills. The candles burned out long before your legend ever will.
Tonight, Sir Richard Attenborough, Elizabeth Dole, longtime friend Liz Tabaris, Diana's one-time kindergarten student, Alex Balls, and we'll hear from some of the millions of people around the world whose lives were touched by the Queen of Hearts.
You were the greatest lady cells where lives were torn apart. Goodbye, English road from a country lost without your soul, who missed the wings of your compassion more than you will ever know. And it seems to me you've lived your life like a candle in the wind, never fading with the sunset when the rain set in. And your footsteps will always fall here along England's greenest hills. The candles burned out long before your legend ever will.
In a moment, farewell to a princess. Good evening from London. This is the story of a lovely young princess who cast a spell on the world with beauty, charm, and a tender heart. Her name was Diana, Diana, Princess of Wales. Her story began like a fairy tale, once upon a time. It ended much too soon. Tonight, as we tell Diana's story, we will begin at the end with the spectacular outpouring of love and affection today as the world said farewell to a princess.
In the clear, chilly morning, the cortege marched out of Kensington Palace, slowly, into a sea of mourners. Alone at first, escorted only by members of the Welsh Guard. The casket was mounted on a simple gun carriage, draped with the royal standard, topped by bouquets of lilies from her brother Earl Spencer and the sons she left so suddenly, William and Harry. The smallest held a card that said simply, Mummy. The crowd was quiet, very quiet, expressing their sorrow in a great silence. At the same time, those invited to the service began arriving at Westminster Abbey. People who represented all the threads of the princess's life, from the arts to politics, to family and friends. At St. James Palace, Prince William and Prince Harry waited with their father, Prince Charles, to join the procession, along with Earl Spencer, the princess's brother. The silence of the crowd was punctuated only by the clatter of horses' hooves. When the cortege reached the abbey, the princess's coffin was borne into the ancient cathedral by 8 members of the Welsh Guard. Elton John performed his new version of Candle in the Wind, rewritten for the occasion.
Goodbye, rose, may you ever grow in our hearts. You are the grace that placed yourselves where lives were torn apart. You called out to our country, and you whispered to those in pain. Now you belong to heaven, and the stars spell out your name. And it seems to me you lived your life like a candle in the wind, never fading with the sunset when the rain set in. And your footsteps will always fall here along England's greenest hills. Your candles burned out long before your legend ever will.
I stand before you today, the representative of a family in grief.
In his eulogy, Charles, Earl Spencer, sounded sad and bitter. His powerful words took direct aim at the press for hunting Diana and at the royal family for binding her in tradition and stripping her of her royal title.
Diana was the very essence of compassion, of duty, of style, of beauty. All over the world, she was a symbol of selfless humanity, a standard bearer for the rights of the truly downtrodden, a very British girl who transcended nationality, someone with a natural nobility who was classless, and who proved in the last year that she needed no royal title to continue to generate her particular brand of magic. And here we come to another truth about her. For all the status, the glamour, the applause, Diana remained throughout a very insecure person at heart, almost childlike in her desire to do good for others, so she could release herself from deep feelings of unworthiness, of which her eating disorders were merely a symptom. The world sensed this part of her character and cherished her for her vulnerability, whilst admiring her for her honesty. There is no doubt that she was looking for a new direction in her life at this time. She talked endlessly of getting away from England, mainly because of the treatment that she received at the hands of the newspapers. I don't think she ever understood why her genuinely good intentions were sneered at by the media, why there appeared to be a permanent quest on their behalf to bring her down. It is baffling. My own and only explanation is that genuine goodness is threatening to those at the opposite end of the moral spectrum. It is a point to remember that of all the ironies about Diana, perhaps the greatest was this: a girl given the name of the ancient goddess of hunting was, in the end, the most hunted person of the modern age. She would want us today to pledge ourselves to protecting her beloved boys, William and Harry, from a similar fate. And I do this here, Diana, on your behalf. We will not allow them to suffer the anguish that used regularly to drive you to tearful despair. And beyond that, on behalf of your mother and sisters, I pledge that we, your blood family, will do all we can to continue the imaginative and loving way in which you are steering these two exceptional young men, so that their souls are not simply immersed by duty and tradition, but can sing openly as you planned. William and Harry, we all care desperately for you today. We're all chewed up with sadness at the loss of a woman who wasn't even our mother. How great your suffering is, we cannot even imagine. I would like to end by thanking God for the small mercies he's shown us at this dreadful time, for taking Diana at her most beautiful and radiant, and when she had joy in her private life. Above all, we give thanks for the life of a woman I'm so proud to be able to call my sister, the unique, the complex, the extraordinary and irreplaceable Diana, whose beauty, both internal and external, will never be extinguished from our minds.
His message sounded a chord with millions. Applause could be heard throughout London, as if he were speaking to those who discovered this week a new dissatisfaction with the monarchy. The funeral procession, led by a hearse now, wound its way through London streets, applauded by the crowds. past the palaces and monuments that once were part of her life, past the people who had claimed her as their princess, leaving this city which has reacted in such an extraordinary way to her death, to travel through the country which may never think of itself or its monarchy in the same way again.
In a moment, we'll take a closer look at how Diana has changed the monarchy forever and her living legacy, her sons.
But your greatest gift was your intuition, and it was a gift you used wisely. This is what underpinned all your other wonderful attributes.
God have his way of making us come together, and if one person touched us all, it was truly Diana. I don't care if you're white, black, Japanese, African, it doesn't matter.
We love you, Diana!
She was here such a short time, but Princess Diana's impact on the world, the British monarchy in particular, was tremendous, and it will not end with her death. While she is gone, Mark Phillips reminds us a part of her lives on.
What is the legacy that will follow Diana? It followed her quite literally today. Her legacy is the son who will be king, William, walking head bowed behind his mother's coffin. Yes, Diana tried to blow the cobwebs out of the British royalty, but her legacy takes an even more tangible form. She has left behind the future, the hope for the Royal House of Windsor. She has left behind her son, royal writer Ingrid Seward.
I think she felt, well, I know she did, because she said so many, many times, that the monarchy was archaic and it needed to move forward. And I think she saw William as the guiding light, and that will be her legacy.
If today was a test of the stuff William was made of, no 15-year-old could have done more. While the eyes of the country were on him, his eyes were on the ground in front of him, as if looking for the path to the future that fate has provided.
I think it's probably the hardest day of his life, and he took the hardest day of the nation's life and walked like a monarch. You know, and everybody's heart went out to him.
Right from the moment he was born, Diana was determined that motherhood was her top priority. In fact, many feel the friction between her and Prince Charles began when she insisted on taking the infant William with them on a foreign visit. Royals were supposed to leave the children at home. But this was a royal like no other. William would be swaddled with affection, even publicly. William would be seen to be having fun. William would see the world outside the gilded royal cage.
She was trying to create a different kind of king. That's why she took William to visit the homeless, to see AIDS patients, and to see people that were actually suffering. I think she realized it was very important he saw the other side of life.
That's what Diana's brother was referring to when he made that pledge to her today that William's upbringing would not be left only to the royals.
I pledge that we, your blood family, will do all we can to continue the imaginative and loving way in which you are steering these two exceptional young men, so that their souls are not simply immersed by duty and tradition, but can sing openly as you planned.
Thank you so much. Diana's death has now increased the pressure on William. He's expected not just to have his mother's sensibilities, he's expected to replace her in the hearts of the people, and to have the charismatic appeal, historian David Starkey says, that all the other royals lack.
Obviously, the Queen is not charismatic. Her son is not charismatic. Charles, I fear, has had a charisma bypass. On the other hand, William may be.
There was a lot of talk today about how William and his brother Harry need to be given space and time.
But what we must all hope, I think, is that this sudden prominence, this sudden placing of William in this limelight tinged in black, is not going to be permanent.
William inherited another attitude from his mother, an aversion to the press. The events of the past week are not likely to have changed his mind.
We can see a lot of his mother in him today, and I think he will carry part of her throughout his life.
The echoes of the funeral procession have faded now, but its effect lingers on. History walked these streets today, and in a way, the future did too, in the form of a brave 15-year-old boy.
His mother's son, her legacy to the country and to the world that had consumed her.
It's hard to believe when you see pictures of Princess Diana in fancy gowns with her beautiful smile and eyes, perfectly coiffed hair. But as a child, Diana considered herself an ugly duckling, gawky and shy. What a remarkable transformation. She would become, as Anthony Mason reports, the best known and the most photographed woman in the world.
Never mind that Diana never became a queen. The cameras crowned her. Her star was born years ago, but the myth is only now in the making.
What's really interesting about the myth of Diana, as it's going to be, is that she was turned into a myth by being married, but it turned out that her true bridegroom was the public.
We were somehow wedded to her that day 16 years ago. The bond was formed with those first fetching glances. Maybe we weren't always loyal to her in sickness and in health, but we've learned our affections went far deeper than anyone ever knew. On that day, she married into the ritual glamour of Britain's royal family. But, says Joan Juliet Buck, editor of French Vogue, this princess was a provocateur in the House of Windsor.
Here was someone who was brought into a very cold family where dignity, stoicism, and the stiff upper lip were basically the three modes of expression. And she was somebody graceful, who took the light well, and who responded as a human being.
She was never a classic beauty. Her nose was a bit big, her mouth a bit small. But even the French, who think they invented style, saw this British princess had something. Actress Anouk Aimée.
She had a kind of freedom, and she was very modern, and she was very glamorous. I mean, I can see her sometimes. She has an elegance when she walks with her evening dresses. She has an elegance of movement, which is often more important than just beauty.
She was exceptional because she could be ordinary. She was the princess who wore biker shorts, a queen in waiting who confessed her eating problems, suicidal thoughts, and terrible taste in men. And we thought,
gosh, she's just like us. And every time she goofed, she was more like a human being. Her vulnerability is the absolute source of the love that the British expressed for her today.
and not just the British people. Her death here in this Paris tunnel 1 week ago tonight made millions everywhere realize that Diana was not just some fashion queen and tabloid curiosity. We actually cared about her.
I think it's the first really democratic princess that exists in the world.
French actress Ariel Dombasle.
She had her head on the stars and on the glamour, and her feet on the ground, and that's why we like her. We love her, and we cried about her disappearance from the world.
We belonged to her in the end more than we ever imagined. It was a mistake to think she was just a magazine cover. The true glamour of Diana's life was the grace and dignity with which she lived it.
Here in London, it's well past midnight, and after having been bathed in sunlight earlier in the day, the Abbey is deep in darkness now, and still they come. This is live from just behind me here in front of Westminster Abbey. Flowers, candles. This crowd has been a steady stream. since the hearse left for Diana's ancestral home north of London around midday. And this scene will be here at dawn. Still ahead, Sir Richard Attenborough, the film director, and the man who taught this most public of women to speak in public.
Time is too long for those who grieve, too short for those who rejoice. But for those who love, time is eternity.
We respect her so much for her love that she so freely gave, and she's truly right when she said the greatest disease in this world was the lack of love.
Princess Diana had a magic about her that was captivating. In life, people just couldn't get enough of her. In death, hundreds of millions all over the world were drawn to their televisions to watch her funeral. Only about 2,000 mourners could be accommodated here inside Westminster Abbey, but many more, perhaps millions, lined the streets of London to say goodbye. Jane Robelo was out among them.
Probably one of the saddest days of my whole life.
There'll never be anyone to replace her. Never.
It's just terrible loss for everybody, I think.
On the streets of London today, the outpouring of affection for the people's princess was everywhere.
It's indescribable. We didn't want to watch this on television. We wanted to be here and feel it.
From the street sweepers,
I see it as she was just like a second queen to us in this country.
To those who camped out for days.
How can so many people love one person?
To the children who idolized her.
I want to be with her today because I want to be like, to mean something to her. I just like the way she's got the effort to actually go and touch these people who are ill or some are dying. I hope I can do the same someday.
Alex Balls was a child when he got to know the princess.
I feel that a part of us has contributed to her. I feel she's contributed to our lives as well.
Alex was 5 when the teenage Diana Spencer was his kindergarten teacher.
Diana came around to the school and handed each of us out a slice. It's fruitcake as well, and I believe you can actually eat it still, but I wouldn't dare.
But today, he was one of the millions from all walks of life, from all across this country, united in grief.
I hope she's looking down and watching us all and smiling.
I've met Diana 62 times since 1981.
Colin Edwards is a devoted royalist.
Very, very personal.
He says he never missed Princess Di's London appearances.
I mean, she was the most beautiful woman I ever saw in my life. And now she's gone from us. It's just devastating.
The funeral was the people's opportunity to mourn their princess. Afterwards, at a corner pub, they shared their memories of the day with us. What part of the service today was the most emotional part for you?
Elton John. I think Elton John was the only person that wasn't crying. Only because he was singing. It's hard to imagine life without Princess Diana. It really is.
Did you need to see the coffin to really believe it?
Yeah. Believe it. We needed to see it, and we've seen it, and but even now it's still hasn't sunk in.
Thinking all fellas fancy that secretly. And that's why it's hard on the fella, because she was so classy and lovely, and every fella dreamed of being with Diana. That's just very hard, isn't it?
We all got to know her because of the publicity. The publicity made her, and it also killed her.
Alex Balls hopes Diana's death is not in vain.
Diana always wanted to help people, and I think that she'd like her legacy to go on.
Everybody knew her. From the road sweeper, wherever you were, she spoke. She knew your name. what she did. She was the people's princess. That title has never been given, and it suited her perfectly.
So much was written about Princess Diana, this most famous woman in the world. The public felt as if they knew her. Today, I talked to some friends of the princess who really did know her and came here to her funeral. Liz Tabaris, editor of Harper's Bazaar, the fashion magazine, and Sir Richard Attenborough, the actor and filmmaker. Sir Richard first met Diana 15 years ago when Prince Charles asked him to coach his young wife on speaking in public.
And she was an immensely shy and almost frightened young woman. The first thing one had to do was to try and give her a belief in herself. But the marvelous thing that I remember most of all was her sense of humor about herself. She was never frightened of falling on her face, and managed to cope with almost anything that happened by mocking herself. But her real humor was the fact that when I used to make speeches about things, she would send me handwritten notes telling me what I ought to have done, and that was what I told her to do, and I hadn't done it, etc., etc. How did she develop into the most publicized woman in the world and a great world beauty, and a woman who mesmerized not only her own native people, but people around the world? How did that happen? She was dead honest to start with. I mean, beyond anything else. And she had the most phenomenal intuition. She wasn't academically bright. She joked about that. But boy, was she intelligent as far as intuition was concerned. She just knew how to conduct herself and how to deal with certain circumstances. But beyond that, she was courageous. She had, her life really was pretty unhappy very soon after the marriage. It never really worked for her in any great degree. And she suffered great pain. And she suffered great feelings of inadequacy. And she, because of that, had a sense of what pain and, in a way, dismissal and even deprivation meant. And so in an extraordinary way, somebody who was in pain or who was suffering in some sense or another by rejection or not having a voice, needs to know how to reach them. In terms of understanding human beings and understanding what compassion and the demonstration of love meant, she was the queen.
Let's talk about your friend Diana. How did you meet her? Where did you meet her? Why did you become friends with her?
The friendship grew very slowly because I, in 1987, became the editor-in-chief of British Vogue. And British Vogue has always covered the royal family. Her life as she grew into her role as Princess of Wales, which she did very graciously. And then when I came to New York, the friendship continued. And I must say it strengthened very much when I had ovarian cancer. And as always, compassionate and kind as a friend, and rang constantly. And my husband picked up the phone one day, and she said, "Who's it with?" She said, "It's Diana." She said, "Diana Windsor." So my husband said, "Okay, I'll put you on." And it just continued from there. And it was a very, she was very interested today. And down, after a bone marrow transplant, I was trying to get my platelets up because I could go home for Labor Day. And they said if they didn't get over 80,000, I could not go home. And they were down. By the end of the day, they were at 80,000. They'd gone 30,000, and they'd never shifted that much. So call it what you will, but the more healing and the more good work she did, the more her sort of spirit. She always had a wonderful bit of gossip or a wonderful, joke or anything, just anything to take the person she was talking to's mind off their problems. And she just was so generous. And she was going time as well, but she had time for everybody, including me, which was great.
What she was doing, how much she was doing, too much?
No, because she had very high energy. She really crammed an enormous amount into one day, into 1 week. And she was so often photographed. And you can imagine the pressure. She used to come to New York, and
One time she came with her sister Sarah, and in the morning Sarah went out shopping for, presents for the children, and the princess couldn't go because she couldn't go outside the building because it would be too problematic, and so she had to remain inside. So she was kind of a prisoner unless she was doing, charity work or it was a public function. It's very hard for her.
We all know that King Arthur, the legend of King Arthur, buried on an island, Avalon, the once and future king. Is she the once and future princess?
Very definitely. Very definitely. And I think King, as and when he should, then it will ease the pain. But until that time, there'll be a lot of pain.
Princess Diana used the spotlight that shone on her, among other things, about people in need. Diana had her share of pain in life. Perhaps that is what made her so sympathetic to the pain of others. Representatives of the many charities the princess' funeral procession today, they were there for them. Paula Zahn looks now at some of Diana's causes and her positive effect.
It was the highlight of the New York Diana, the Princess of Wales, came to Christie's last June to auction off 79 of her gowns for charity. Before it was over, Diana would raise nearly $6 million for AIDS and breast cancer research. Once again, she was able to turn her star power into real benefit for those people whose voices had trouble being heard.
It is tempting to avoid involvement with the world of AIDS, with its deformities, disablement, and death.
Early on, she took on the cause of AIDS victims. In her first official visit to New York in 1989, the Royal Limo went to Harlem Hospital's Pediatric AIDS Unit. Matilda Cuomo, the wife of New York's then Governor Mario Cuomo, remembers the visit well.
What were your impressions then? This was a woman who in her status, at her status in life and lifestyle, could take time, real time, talk about issues that were not glamorous. They were not really popular. I mean, when you think about AIDS at that time.
All too soon, we will all know someone with AIDS. A brother, sister, mother, father, son or daughter could be next. How will we treat them? With compassion and care, or fear and rejection?
To fight that fear and
she didn't have to, but she did it.
Joan McCarley and her sister, Debbie Tate, are the founders of Grandma's House, a home for Princess Diana paid a visit, and one little girl ride in the princess's limo.
We would say, oh, no, you can't ride. We'll walk around, and then the limousine will meet you. You can't do that. She says, and she just grabbed the child up.
Joan and Debbie say Diana's gesture was more than symbolic. It had another impact. The princess gave the sisters $100,000 to buy another house for children with AIDS.
She made a difference on many levels.
Elizabeth Dole, president of the American...
My association with the Landmine Campaign began in January when I traveled to Angola with the British Red Cross.
The painful pictures told the story, whose limbs had been blown off by landmines. What she did was force the world to look at them.
My purpose was to draw world attention to this vital but hitherto largely neglected issue.
How would you assess Diana's level of knowledge about landmines and her level of interest in the intricacies of the issue?
She was very substantive on the subject. My admiration is partly for the fact that she had put so much effort into really being an expert on the subject, and it was not just a passing fancy, it was a passion for her.
And one of Diana's role models was Mother Teresa's whole life to comforting the sick and helping the unfortunate. But when Diana started practicing what Mother Teresa preached, some questioned her motives. There was a great deal of skepticism out there that basically what she was really trying to do. Was that criticism warranted?
No, I don't think so. I think she had a real healing effect on people. I certainly admire her commitment and her
just enormous concern for those who haven't had a fair shake in life or who have a real difficult problem to overcome.
Joan McCarley and Debbie Tate say they plan to rename the house the Princess, and the attention Diana was able to focus on landmines has spurred new action in the internet to ban them. In many ways, Diana's work lives on, even if her voice of compassion has been silenced.
A princess was buried today with a rosary that was a gift from Mother Teresa. In a moment, some thoughts about a family funeral.
Basically, she just cared for all people, and she was just a common amazing. We all love her because of that, and she cared for humanity.
What? There'll be more about Princess Diana, her funeral tomorrow on Sunday morning with Charles Osgood and on Face the Nation Schiefer. Some final thoughts now on this day when the bells pealed and the tears fell across England. Great Britain honored Diana, Princess of Wales, not with a state ceremony, but with what turned out to be a family funeral. It is, after all, only at family funerals that brothers speak out about old hurts, that wreaths bear cards hand-lettered with the word Mummy, and that genuine tears fall. Diana's family, those who called her their own, overflowed Westminster Abbey today. They filled the parks and lined the streets of London and spread beyond. In the beginning, Diana captured the world's attention with her good looks and her glamour. In the end, through her adversity and her devotion to good works, she captured their hearts. She became family. Tonight, Diana rests on an island in an English lake, where perhaps, finally, she will find the privacy and peace that evaded her during her short life. From London, I'm Dan Rather, CBS News. Good night.
Order a VHS cassette of Farewell to a Princess. Please call 1-800-934-NEWS.
Goodbye, Rose. May you ever grow in our hearts. You were the great place to set where lives were torn apart. Called out to our country, and you whispered to those in pain.
The address is CBS. Welcome home.